Chapter 128. Go to Watch Network. When Li Yundong returned to campus, he noticed that the students around him were standing not far from him, looking as if they had not seen him for centuries. They were all pointing fingers at him. The boys were smiling meaningfully, and the girls were giggling. "Damn it," Li Yundong murmured. "Looks like the whole school has heard about this." Feng Na covered her mouth and laughed. "How could it not have? Your story has already been posted on the campus forum to the 8,000th comment." Li Yundong laughed. "What a bunch of idiots." Li Yundong laughed. "What a bunch of idiots." Cheng Cheng covered her mouth and snickered, but said nothing. The news of Li Yundong's return to campus quickly spread to the teachers. Each and every one of them stared at Li Yundong strangely, as if they could not understand why he had such a powerful background. The principal, Feng Yubin, immediately organized a school-wide meeting. He held Li Yundong's hand on the rostrum and asked him about his well-being. He also promised Li Yundong that this kind of injustice would never happen again. He also thanked Li Yundong again and again for his contribution to the school shooting case. To Li Yundong's amazement, the principal, on behalf of the school board, had awarded him with an honorary Red Flag of Honor for acting bravely in a just cause. Li Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. The one who presented the Red Flag of Honor was Director Qian. The smiling director handed the red flag to Li Yundong, praising Li Yundong as if it was a matter of course. He said that Li Yundong was the pride of Tiannan University and would be recorded in the school's history in the future. Li Yundong, of course, did not believe such hypocritical words. He said a few more polite words, then walked down the rostrum to the applause of the whole school. Feng Na came up to him and winked at him. "Hey, are you going to treat me to a meal now?" Li Yundong rolled his eyes at her and tossed the red flag into her arms. "I'm giving it to you," he said. "What's the use of this thing? Is it even enough to pay for a meal? Seriously, why don't you give me a bonus?" Suddenly, the class monitor, who was standing next to Li Yundong, laughed. "Seriously? You only care about money?" Li Yundong sighed. "I almost fell asleep on the road." "Yundong, are we out of money?" Su Chan asked weakly. Only then did Li Yundong remember that Su Chan was still by his side. He turned around and patted her, pretending to be angry. "Don't interrupt when adults are talking." Su Chan pouted and said, "Oh." Then she stopped talking. Watch net. 7K. OM. Rainbow * asterisk literature _ learning % super # speed. Update. Feng Na, on the other hand, looked at Li Yundong thoughtfully and secretly made up her mind. When the meeting was finally over, Li Yundong returned to the classroom. He grabbed Sun Li by the arm and asked, "Class rep, can I take a look at your notes on the other exam subjects?" Sun Li sneered. "Yo, you don't usually burn incense, but you're here to make a last-minute cradle." Li Yundong smiled shyly and said, "Class rep, good class rep, you can't just leave me in the lurch. There are hundreds of them. How can I see them all? Please do me a favor, and do me a favor." Sun Li giggled and said, "How can it be as exaggerated as a few hundred? There are only a dozen of them." Li Yundong yelled in an exaggerated voice, "A dozen of them is scary enough. I only have a day to read so many teaching materials. How can I finish reading them all?" Sun Li tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Fine," she said. "Since you brought glory to the class, I'll go look for them for you. You wait here." Li Yundong was overjoyed. "Class rep, you're my savior," he said, bowing deeply. "I'm counting on you for the rest of my life." Sun Li blushed and said, "What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Wait here. I'll be back in a minute." After Sun Li left, Su Chan whispered to Li Yundong, "Yundong, why do you have to study?" Li Yundong sighed. "You really don't know how expensive rice and fuel are until you take charge of the household. If I quit school, my parents will find out next month. Then I'll have no source of income." Su Chan blinked and asked, "Haven't you already found a job?" Li Yundong sighed again. "Do you really think it's that easy?" Li Yundong thought. "President Chow looks like she wants to have a thing with me. And this woman is so seductive. How am I supposed to go to school? What if I lose control one day? All of my efforts will go down the drain." Su Chan saw that Li Yundong was in trouble, so she didn't ask any more questions. She just sat there quietly and snuggled up to him. Go to reading net. 7K. Sunli returned to the classroom 10 minutes later. She was holding a thick stack of notebooks in her arms. They were at least a foot tall. Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air and leaned back unconsciously. His face was full of horror. F***ck, no way, he said. So many? Isn't this going to take me 8 to 10 years to read? Sunli slammed the stack of notebooks down in front of Li Yundong. These are just the tables of contents, she said. Li Yundong almost flipped over in his seat. He stared blankly and stammered. Are you exaggerating? Do you think this is Stephen Chow's The Deer in the Cauldron? Sunli burst into laughter. I was kidding. Here are the contents of the test. Li Yundong stared at the pile of notebooks with a bitter look on his face. There are so many of them. How am I supposed to read them all? Sunli clapped her hands and said, Well, that's your problem then. I've finally helped you out. The rest is none of my business. Li Yundong cupped his hands at Sunli. All right, thank you. But where did you get all these notebooks from? Don't you need to read them? Sunli looked at Li Yundong, shook her head and sighed. Do you really think that all the other students are like you? Unparalleled heroes? We've already read all the notebooks we need to read. Suddenly Sunli giggled. You have no idea how excited the girls in the girls' dorm were when they heard that you wanted to borrow their notebooks. They even took out their treasured notebooks. TSK. You really are the most charming of them all. I'm impressed. By the way, there are a lot of notebooks here. Make sure you don't ruin them. You'll have to return them to them. Sunli, the Sichuan hot chili pepper, had a mischievous glint in her eyes. She walked away, humming a little tune as she swayed her braided hair. Li Yundong stared at the huge pile of notebooks with a frown on his face. He felt a headache coming on. Forget it. Worst comes to worst, I'll just stay up all night. Didn't I have a photographic memory? Li Yundong gritted his teeth and swore inwardly. Li Yundong hugged the stack of notebooks with a look of valiance on his face. Girl, you lead the way. He yelled at Su Chan. I'm going to burn the midnight oil tonight. Su Chan giggled. Okay, sir. Then she skipped to the front. The two of them were completely oblivious to the fact that Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling had been watching them the whole time. As soon as Ruan Hongling saw Li Yundong, she was filled with anger and fear. Zi Yuan, on the other hand, was staring at Li Yundong in confusion, as if she couldn't figure out what was going on. After they got in the car and returned to their residence, Zi Yuan said to Ruan Hongling, Hongling, you're wrong again. What am I wrong about? Ruan Hongling asked in confusion. Zi Yuan said lightly, This man and this demon are both children. Can't you see that? What? Ruan Hongling exclaimed. How is that possible? Zi Yuan looked at Ruan Hongling and sighed. Hongling, she said. I told you you can't judge people based on your own likes and dislikes. You have to observe them more. Look at the two of them. The girl's eyebrows are tightly furrowed, her pelvis is tightly closed, and her buttocks are tight. Her legs are sealed like iron gates, and it's hard to get a finger through the gap between her thighs. Look at the way she walks. You can tell that she's a virgin. Look at Li Yundong. Why was he able to take your magical item with his bare hands? Now it's clear that this man is also a virgin. The blood of a virgin in his body is the most young thing in the world. It can break your own magical item. Everything has its vanquisher. Therefore, it's not surprising that he took it with his bare hands. Only then did Ruan Hongling understand, and the fear in her eyes gradually disappeared. She patted her chest and said, I was wondering why he was so powerful. Even Master couldn't take my magical item with his bare hands. Damn it, I was scared by him, so I turned around and ran away. If I had known, I would have been able to take them down by myself. Zi Yuan frowned and said unhappily, Hongling, why are you saying that again? You underestimate the enemy. You don't have a magical item, and your cultivation is not good enough. How can you fight with him? Moreover, this man is a virgin. How can you infer that he is a pervert based on your own likes and dislikes? Moreover, learning the immortal method is not for you to show off and fight fiercely. You are really reckless. Ruan Hongling pouted and looked unconvinced. She snorted in her heart. If learning the immortal method is not used to enforce justice on behalf of heaven, then what's the use of learning it? This successor of Jindan is your future lover. So you naturally have to speak up for him. Humph, you take this saying so seriously. Ziyuan knew her shimmy very well. Although she couldn't really probe into her mind to understand what she was thinking, she could more or less understand something from her eyes. Ziyuan didn't refute Wan Hongling's unspoken thoughts. Her thoughts drifted far away, as if she had returned to the scene 10 years ago. She vaguely remembered that she was still a little girl of 8 or 9 years old. That day, Master had taken her to the top of the mountain and looked down at the world and the vast sea of clouds. Ziyuan, do you know that you can see your past and present lives here? Although Master had lived for almost 200 years, he was still so handsome and sage-like. He pointed to the Fengchen stone on the top of the mountain and said with a smile. How had she answered at that time? Yes, it seemed that she had answered like this. Master, my past life is in the past and can't be reversed. I just want to know what will happen in this life. At that time, Master had laughed. He had raised his hand and broken a branch of a pine tree. Using the sea of clouds as an inkstone and the morning glow as a pen and ink, he had written a psalm on the Fengchen stone. After writing the psalm, Master had pointed to it and said to her, Your fate in this life is in it. At that time, she had looked at this huge Fengchen stone and found that it was engraved with cursive characters written in colorful clouds. It was unrestrained and majestic. When Jindan appears, the fate of the world is determined. When the thunder first strikes, the truth is revealed. She had read the first sentence of this psalm and raised her head to ask Master, What does it mean when Jindan appears? The fate of the world is determined. At that time, Master had stroked her head lovingly and said with emotion, It means that on the day Jindan appears, your Mr. Right will appear. Mr. Right? But if I don't know him, why should I recognize him as my Mr. Right? Haha, why do we have to know each other? Ziyuan. But if I hate this person very much, or if I don't have any feelings for this person, what should I do? Why would I fall in love with him? Ziyuan, don't ask me why now. You can find out for yourself in the future. And you have to remember this is fate. Fate doesn't care about why. There's no right or wrong in fate. The point is, this is your fate. Ziyuan let out a long sigh, her eyes blurred and confused. She whispered in her heart, Master, I have already seen the successor of Jindan. As I said back then, I don't have any feelings for him. He is no ordinary person. But why does Master say that he is my fate? Why on earth? Ziyuan looked ahead in a daze. She unconsciously murmured, Let's wait and see. Why on earth? Happy reading. Chapter 129. Go to CNET. Li Yundong returned to the hotel with a pile of notes. He only opened a few of them for a while, then smiled bitterly. Go to CNET. 7K. The notes were all from his female classmates, and some of the girls knew that he wanted to borrow them, so they boldly wrote confessions in the notebooks. Li Yundong forced himself to skip the content and read on. After reading for a while, he felt his head swell. Even though he had achieved success in qi cultivation and had a photographic memory, how could he read so much? During the Three Kingdoms period, Zhang Song had a photographic memory and forced Cao Cao to burn his copy of Mengda's new book. But how big were the characters in ancient times? How big were the characters now? Zhang Song read a paragraph of Mengda's new book, at most a few thousand words, but this notebook had at least 100,000 words. Li Yundong counted the number of notes. There were a total of 12 books. Nearly 1,000,000 words. How could he read it? Wouldn't it kill him? Li Yundong groaned and fell onto the bed, holding the notebook. Su Chan watched him memorize. Because the room was small, she didn't want to disturb Li Yundong, so she couldn't do anything. The more she sat, the more bored she became. After a while, Su Chan knelt in front of Li Yundong pitifully, pulled his sleeve and said, Sir, I miss home. Li Yundong was not in the mood to memorize. He sighed and said, I miss home too. Su Chan thought for a moment and said weakly, Why don't we go back and have a look? Li Yundong smiled and said, Aren't you afraid that your enemies will come to find you? Su Chan shook Li Yundong's arm and said, Let's go back and have dinner. It should be fine, right? I miss your food. Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "Well, let's go back and have a look. It's been a few days, so it should be fine, right?" The two young boys and girls discussed for a while, then secretly left the hotel, secretly took a taxi, and secretly went to Hongqing District. Then they sneaked back to the home they had been away from for a few days. Go to CNET. As soon as they entered the house, Li Yundong glanced at the broken glass table on the ground. He sighed. Home is still the best. Suchan also sighed. Yeah. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Although they had not lived here for a long time, they had already regarded this place as their home. Little Fox searched the house carefully and vigilantly. When she didn't find anything out of the ordinary, she leaped onto her bed and rolled around. Home is still the most comfortable, she said in a silly voice. Li Yundong swept up the scattered glass fragments on the ground and said, "Of course. How can they be compared?" Suchan rolled around on the bed for a while, hugging the pillow. Seeing that there was no movement in the living room, she quietly got up and looked into the living room. She saw Li Yundong lying on the sofa, memorizing notes. Suchan was unhappy. She ran up to him and said coquettishly, "Oh, you said you'd come back to cook for me." Li Yundong pointed at the kitchen. "Isn't there one in the fridge?" "I'm busy. The exam is the day after tomorrow. Do you want me to put up a red light?" Suchan shook Li Yundong's hand. No. I want to eat the food you made for me. The hot, steaming food. I don't want to eat cold food." Li Yundong put down the notebook in his hand and looked at Suchan. "Praise me," he said. "I'll go." Suchan giggled and kissed Li Yundong's cheek. "You're the best, sir. I like you the most." "No," Li Yundong said with a straight face. "That's too cliché. I'm sick of it." Suchan pouted and thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "You love me the most, sir. You'll go, okay?" "No," Li Yundong said, feigning anger. "You're getting more and more perfunctory. If you want to praise me, just praise me, okay?" Suchan lowered her head, feeling wronged. But then, she suddenly thought of something and threw herself in front of Li Yundong. She smiled like a flower and said, "Sir, your girl is so beautiful. You're so lucky." Li Yundong burst out laughing. He threw away the notebook in his hand, held the little girl in his arms, and kissed her hard. He rubbed the little girl's nose lovingly with his nose. "Well, you're so cunning. That works too. I'll go make you something delicious." Suchan laughed happily. "You're the best, sir." Li Yundong smiled. "You're so obedient and beautiful. Of course I have to be good to her." Suchan giggled and pulled Li Yundong up from the sofa. "I'll help you. Go watch the net." Li Yundong was shocked. "Don't. Stay in the living room and watch TV. Don't go into the kitchen, please." Suchan puffed her cheeks and said, "You're so annoying. Hurry up." Li Yundong put on his apron with a smile. "Okay, I'll show you what it means to be as fast as lightning." 20 minutes later, Li Yundong had made 3 dishes and a soup. Although the dishes were just home-cooked dishes and weren't very sumptuous, Li Yundong and Suchan ate happily. The warmth of the meal was far more than what they had in the hotel. After dinner, Li Yundong continued to lie on the sofa and study his notes. Suchan leaned against him and said in a sweet voice, "Yundong, I don't want to go back to the hotel. I still want to stay here." Li Yundong put down the notes in his hand. "Aren't you afraid that your enemies will come to find you?" Suchan said with a sad face, "I'm afraid. But I don't want to leave. What should I do?" Li Yundong thought for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Didn't you say that there's a rule in the cultivation world that you can't offend ordinary people?" Suchan nodded. "Yes." Li Yundong tapped his nose. "Then, I haven't reached the Zhuji phase yet. Am I a cultivator?" Suchan thought for a moment. "Probably not." Li Yundong clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Isn't that right? Since I'm not a cultivator, then they shouldn't come to me. We'll close the doors and windows tightly. They won't force their way in, will they?" Suchan blinked. She felt that there was something wrong with Li Yundong's idea, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. After all, she was inexperienced. How could she know that Li Yundong's idea was not only naive but also stupid? Suchan thought for a moment and reluctantly agreed to Li Yundong's idea. The two of them snuggled up in the living room. Su-chan leaned against the sofa and sat on the carpet, her head pillowed on Li Yundong's belly. Li Yundong was still holding his notebook and reading like crazy, burning the midnight oil. The day of the final exam came, and Li Yundong finally finished reading all the notes. He hadn't closed his eyes for more than a day. His brain was severely overdrawn, and there were dark circles under his eyes, which made Su-chan's heart ache. When they arrived at school and sat down in the classroom, Zhou Qin, who happened to be next to Li Yundong, was startled. She stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes and thought to herself, did the two of them go too far? Did they end up like this? Thinking of this, Zhou Qin couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in her heart. Li Yundong felt a little creeped out by Zhou Qin's gaze. He unconsciously reached out and touched his face. Is there something wrong with my face? Zhou Qin's expression was strange. There's nothing wrong with your face, but why do you look like a dying person? Your eyes are dark. Didn't you look in the mirror? Li Yundong held his head in pain. Don't mention it. There are so many notes. My head is about to explode. As he said this, Li Yundong made a hand gesture. There are so many notes. I'll finish reading them in 2 nights. Do you think I won't have dark circles under my eyes? Only then did Zhou Qin understand, and the pain in her heart eased a little. She opened her mouth and was about to speak, but suddenly, an invigilator walked in with a stack of exam papers under his arm and said in a dignified voice, "Students, please be quiet. The exam will begin next." With a walla sound, all the students in the classroom put away their things one after another and sat up straight. Li Yundong and Zhou Qin also stopped talking. Li Yundong took out the exam pen and subconsciously glanced out of the window. Su-chan, who was waiting for Li Yundong outside the window, smiled and waved at him. Li Yundong also smiled at her, then took a deep breath and waited for the exam to begin, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. After the exam papers were handed out, the invigilator sat on the podium and picked up a newspaper to read. Li Yundong was very puzzled by his attitude. Why is the invigilator so lax this time? Not only is there only one teacher, but he's also reading the newspaper. In the past, these teachers were like ghosts. They were ruthless when it came to arresting people, but when Li Yundong withdrew his gaze, he suddenly saw a student in the front row flipping through a small piece of paper under the table while doing questions. Li Yundong smacked his forehead and secretly regretted it. I'm so stupid. Why didn't I think of making a cheat sheet? If this isn't cheating, I'll be damned if I can pass. But soon, he saw another student not far away, flipping through a book under the table while doing questions. Li Yundong was stunned. Isn't this person a little too bold? Isn't she afraid of getting arrested for such a big book? The consequences of being arrested are very serious. Just as Li Yundong was in a state of shock, he suddenly heard the clear and loud sound of a book being flipped. Li Yundong turned his head, and suddenly his eyes widened. He saw Zhou Qin place a book on his desk, flipping through it while doing questions. It was as if she didn't care about the invigilator at all. Li Yundong's eyes widened, and he thought to himself, is this too much? Is the exam for the descendants of high-ranking officials also this awesome? Li Yundong stared at Zhou Qin for a while. Seeing that she had no intention of avoiding the invigilator at all, he couldn't help but sneak a look at Zhou Qin's desk with his pen and whisper, "Hey, aren't you being too arrogant? You actually put the book on the desk to copy." Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong with a stunned and puzzled expression. She said, "Today is an open book exam. Isn't it normal for me to flip through a book?" "What? An open book exam?" Li Yundong almost spat out 3 liters of blood. He said in exasperation, No one told me." Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong's expression and tried to hold back her laughter. "Not only today, but tomorrow and the day after tomorrow will also be open book exams. Do you know why? It's because I'm taking care of you. You're really too important. F***ck. I didn't sleep for a day and 2 nights. You call this taking care of me?" Li Yundong burst into tears. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 130. Please remember the domain name of this website, or search on Baidu, Sanlian Literature website. Even though Li Yundong had finished all the questions, he was still full of resentment. As soon as he walked out of the classroom, he saw Sun Li chatting happily with other students in the hallway. Sun Li! Li Yundong yelled as soon as he saw Sun Li. Sun Li screamed the moment she saw Li Yundong. Then she turned and ran. Li Yundong was so angry that he ran after her. Hey, stop right there. Sun Li pushed her way through the crowd, laughing as she ran. Stop right there. You're messing with me, aren't you? Li Yundong said angrily. You didn't tell me it was an open book exam. You made me memorize all those notes. Sun Li laughed. You're the one who doesn't show up all day. You don't even know what's going on at school. What does it have to do with me? Besides, you didn't ask. Li Yundong laughed angrily. Then it's still my problem. He chased after her. The students in the hallway had no idea what was going on, so they parted to make way for him. Just as Li Yundong was about to catch up to her, Sun Li raised her head and saw Feng Na and Cheng Cheng walking towards them from a short distance away. Sun Li quickly hid behind Feng Na and yelled, Senior, help! Someone's trying to murder us. Feng Na was shocked. She looked up and saw Li Yundong running over angrily. She asked in surprise, What are you two doing? Li Yundong realized that he couldn't just pin Sun Li down and beat her up. He took the opportunity to get off the stage and said to Feng Na, Humph, ask her. Sun Li whispered into Feng Na's ear. Feng Na burst into laughter. Cheng Cheng covered her mouth and snickered. Li Yundong glared at Sun Li. How dare you laugh? You're gloating, aren't you? Feng Na clutched her stomach and laughed. Li Yundong, you're so cute. Cute? Li Yundong's face crumbled. He knew he wasn't going to get away with this. Fine, fine. I'm scared of you guys. I'll get out of here, okay? Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Feng Na called out to him, trying hard not to laugh. By then, Su Chan had also caught up with them. She stared at Li Yundong, Sun Li, and the others in confusion. Is there something you need from me? Li Yundong snorted, looking very unhappy. Let's talk while we walk. Looking around, Feng Na felt that the environment wasn't suitable, so she smiled. Nothing important. I just wanted to have a meal with you. Li Yundong smiled and said, You want to have dinner with me? Okay. I was wondering where I could get my lunch. However, I'll be thick-skinned and say something ugly. Hee hee. I don't have the money to treat you to a meal. Feng Na pursed her lips into a smile and said, You don't have to. When they left the school building, they bumped into Zhou Qin at the bottom of the stairs. Zhou Qin was standing at the bottom of the stairs with her long hair draped over her shoulders. She was holding her textbook in her arms. She looked like a stalk of wintersweet that stood proudly in the snow. She was so beautiful that no one dared approach her. As soon as Zhou Qin saw Li Yundong, a smile broke out on her frosty face. She looked at Feng Na, then nodded at Su Chan with a smile. What are you guys going to do in such a mighty manner? Eat. Li Yundong laughed. He pointed at Feng Na and said, The rich lady is treating us today. I'm going to rip her off. Zhou Qin looked at Feng Na in confusion. She more or less understood what this senior of hers was thinking. What happened? Why are you treating us? Any girl would feel more or less pressured when facing Zhou Qin. This kind of pressure didn't just exist in terms of beauty, temperament, and figure. Zhou Qin's powerful family background would also have a certain impact on these girls. Feng Na didn't want to lose her cool in front of Zhou Qin. Her tone was a little provocative and angry. Do you really have to have something to do to treat us? Zhou Qin raised her eyebrows and was about to say something. Li Yundong saw that the two of them were going to go tit for tat, so he smiled and tried to smooth things over. Oh, this kind of thing is like Zhou Yu fighting Huang Gai. One is willing to fight, and the other is willing to suffer. What else is there to say? Come on, let's go eat. Feng Na and Zhou Qin no longer had the intention to target each other. A trace of sadness flashed in their eyes. Yes, one is willing to fight, and the other is willing to be beaten. It was they who volunteered to join the fight. Who is to blame? Feng Na thought. Su Chan rubbed her stomach and shouted in a sweet voice. What are you guys doing here? My stomach is almost shriveled. Yundong, it's all your fault. You didn't come out earlier. Li Yundong smiled and pinched the girl's cheek. I haven't finished the questions. How could I come out, you little brat? The two of them laughed and joked around, making Feng Na and Zhou Qin feel much better. Zhou Qin opened her red lips and was about to speak when she saw Ding Nan suddenly walk over. Ding Nan's eyes were fixed on Zhou Qin. After staring at her for a long time, she smiled at Li Yundong and said, "Li Yundong, long time no see. You're getting more and more famous now." Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "Don't make fun of me. I'd rather not have this kind of name." Ding Nan looked at Feng Na and the others and smiled. "Are you guys going to eat?" Su Chan, who was completely unaware of the subtle relationship between the girls, shouted. Yeah. I'm starving. Why are you guys still standing here like idiots?" Ding Nan smiled. "Then let me pay for today's meal." "Okay." Feng Na's face showed a hint of displeasure. Ding Nan was an extremely observant girl. She immediately smiled at Feng Na. "Senior Feng Na," she said, "this meal is my way of thanking Li Yundong for saving my life, okay? It's been so many days, and I still haven't thanked him properly." At this point, Feng Na couldn't insist. She smiled. "Thank you for spending so much money," she said. "So many of us have benefited from it." When Ding Nan suddenly stopped being sarcastic, she was indeed a very young and beautiful girl. She was tall and slim, with a sexy and slender figure. Her curves were curvy in all the right places. Even in her school uniform, she looked like a fashion model on the runway. Ding Nan smiled. "Don't mention it. It's my honor. Well, let's go eat near the school first. We have exams in the afternoon. I'll treat you guys another day." Chung Chung, who had been silent all this time, pulled Feng Na aside and whispered, "Hey, why do I feel like there's something wrong with Ding Nan?" "Me too," Feng Na said in a low voice. "Especially her and Zhou Qin. It's so weird." The group of people walked toward the restaurant next to the school. Zhou Qin and Ding Nan seemed to have a tacit understanding and fell behind at the same time. Zhou Qin didn't even look at Ding Nan. She hugged the textbook in front of her chest tightly, as if she was afraid that someone would steal it. "Ding Nan, what do you want? I've given you everything you deserve." Ding Nan didn't look at Zhou Qin either. The two used to be a pair, but now they seemed to have broken up. She stared at Li Yundong, who was not far away, and said flatly, "Nothing. I'm just here to join in the fun." Zhou Qin's cold face showed strong anger and disgust. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome here." Ding Nan chuckled coldly. "Zhou Qin, don't get me wrong," she said, pointing at Li Yundong, who was laughing and joking with Su Chan. "You're just following him. What right do you have to criticize me?" Ding Nan said, pointing at Li Yundong, who was laughing and joking with Su Chan. Zhou Qin sneered. "You think you can steal Li Yundong?" Before Ding Nan could say anything, the roar of a sports car suddenly came from the school gate. A black BMW X5 stopped not far away from Li Yundong, nearly crashing into him. The BMW rolled down its window, and a girl peeked out. She was a pretty girl with smoky makeup, which made her look very coquettish. The girl shouted at Li Yundong's back. "F***CK, don't you have eyes? Don't you know how to give way?" Li Yundong turned his head and gave the girl a sidelong glance. "Idiot! Do you have eyes on the back of your head?" he retorted rudely. Flustered and exasperated, the girl turned around and yelled at the boy in the driver's seat. "Young Master Lu, look at him. He's insulting me." Sitting in the driver's seat was a handsome young man. It was none other than Lu Chuan, the son of Lu Dekai. Lu Chuan's hands were shaking, and the corners of his eyes were twitching. Why did I have to run into this guy again? But the truth was, they were both students of the same school. It was normal for them to not bump into each other for a day, but it was only a matter of time before they ran into each other again. Seeing that Lu Chuan was silent, the girl couldn't help but look at him with disdain. "Young Master Lu, you're not afraid of this guy, are you?" Lu Chuan's nerves were instantly pricked. He shouted hysterically, "You think I'm afraid of him? Who the hell does he think he is?" The girl shouted, "That's right. Let's go teach him a lesson. Damn it. How dare he act so arrogantly here?" While they were talking, Li Yundong poked his head into the car and looked inside. He sneered. "Oh, it's young Master Lu. What's the matter? You got a new car again?" Li Yundong despised Lu Chuan very much. He had been slapped to the ground in public by young Master He, but he didn't even let out a fart. It really made Li Yundong speechless. Even though Lu Chuan hated Li Yundong to the core, he was still afraid of him. The scene at the school gate was still vivid in his mind. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember it vividly. Lu Chuan's legs trembled uncontrollably. He forced himself to calm down and put on a fierce look. "You, what are you doing?" The girl next to him didn't notice Lu Chuan's fierce look. She got out of the car and pointed at Li Yundong. "What the hell are you doing? Hurry up and apologize." Li Yundong sat on the hood of Lu Fei's car and looked at her with a sneer. "Apologize? What did I do to you?" The girl sneered. "You're in our way. Get out of the way. A good dog doesn't stand in the way, you know?" Before Li Yundong had time to get angry, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, Feng Na, Cheng Cheng, and Ding Nan, the 5 girls, were all unhappy. They all glared at her. Su Chan shouted angrily, "You're the dog! How dare you scold me like this?" The girl was about to yell at them, but she turned her head and was immediately shocked. She saw that each of the girls was more beautiful than the other, and each of them had different temperaments. Any one of them was a rare beauty. The girl's imposing manner suddenly faltered, but at this time, there were already a lot of people around watching the fun. She was not willing to lose face like this, so she pointed at Li Yundong and sneered. "Stand up. Do you know how much this car costs? Can you afford it if you break it?" Li Yundong laughed and patted the car door next to Lu Chuan. "Isn't it just a small BMW? I've seen a stretch Mercedes-Benz, haven't I, young Master Lu?" Lu Chuan's face turned purple, and he was speechless. The girl sneered. "Bullsh asterisk T. Bullsh asterisk T." He stood up, clapped his hands, and smiled at Su Chan. "Forget it," he said. "Let's go have dinner. Let's not argue with them." Su Chan nodded. "Forget it. Let's go have dinner. We won't argue with them." The girl saw him turn around and walk away, surrounded by 4 beautiful girls. She felt an indescribable feeling in her heart. "You don't even have a car," she said with a sneer. "What are you trying to show off for?" Li Yundong frowned and turned around to look at the girl. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. The girl was so scared that she took a step back, but she still straightened her neck and said loudly, "Isn't that the case?" As soon as the words left her mouth, the roar of an engine came from not far away. It was the engine of an authentic sports car. A fiery red Lamborghini convertible pulled up to the school gate. The outline of this small sports car was strong and powerful, rough and unrestrained, but in the car sat a beautiful woman wearing sunglasses. This beautiful woman had long brown wavy hair, and she wore a black strapless gown that contrasted sharply with the red car, revealing a deep cleavage on her chest, making her look hot and sexy. Li Yundong felt a headache coming on as soon as he saw the car and the sexy woman in it. "Isn't that President Chow? What is she doing here?" To quickly find this site, please Baidu. Sanlian Literature website. Chapter 131. Go to WatchNet. Lu Chuan and the girls' eyes widened when they saw the car. The girls' eyes were filled with envy and greed. Lu Chuan stammered. Who is this woman?" The girl said sourly. "It must be a mistress." As she spoke, she forgot that she was also a mistress. Go to WatchNet. Go to WatchNet. Chow Kefi got out of the car and asked the boy next to her. She didn't take off her sunglasses, but the wide sunglasses accentuated her sexy, plump red lips. "Hello, is Li Yundong studying in this school?" As a pure and innocent student in an ivory tower, the boy had never seen such a sexy woman before. His eyes widened, and he couldn't speak for a long time. Chow Kefi frowned. Another girl asked the question. This girl was tempted by Chow Kefi's beauty, so she took a step back and pointed at Li Yundong. Chow Kefi turned her head and saw Li Yundong standing about 30 meters away from her. She was overjoyed. She got into the car and drove towards Li Yundong. But Lu Chuan's car was parked on the road, blocking her way. Chow Kefi had no choice but to stick her head out and yell, "Hey, the car in front, please give way." Lu Chuan's heart thumped wildly when he saw the girl driving in his direction. He subconsciously adjusted his posture, then started the car and drove forward a little. He parked the car and was about to get out to get close to the girl when Chow Kefi got out of the car. She looked like a wife who hadn't seen her husband for a long time. Why did you skip work on the second day of work? She said coquettishly. It took me so long to find you. As soon as Chow Kefi finished her sentence, everyone around her immediately turned to look at Li Yundong in a strange light. Lu Chuan and the girl beside him were even more dumbfounded than Li Yundong. Li Yundong coughed awkwardly. This is President Chow, he said. I told you about her. You could say that she's my boss, right? Li Yundong added in his mind. Even though she's not your direct boss. Li Yundong had disappeared without a trace for several days. Yin Mengfan was very mad. She had never seen anyone absent from work on the second day. Chow Kefi was even crazier than her. Chow Kefi had originally thought that she would be able to tease the little boy further the next day. But after waiting for a whole day, he still hadn't come to work. She couldn't help but feel flustered, and began to let her imagination run wild. Did I act too impatient at the last meal and scare him? Chow Kefi thought. Or did he say something wrong or do something wrong? Chow Kefi, who had endured for a few more days, finally couldn't sit still anymore. She asked Yin Mengfan for Li Yundong's detailed information, and then drove to Li Yundong's university. When Chow Kefi found Li Yundong, she was so ecstatic that she even ignored the other people around Li Yundong. When everyone looked at her, she came to her senses. The smile on her face was much more reserved. She nodded to several female friends around Li Yundong and said, Are you all Li Yundong's friends? As she spoke, Chow Kefi's eyes suddenly fell on Zhou Qin. She was shocked and asked tentatively, Zhou Qin? Zhou Qin nodded politely to her. Yes, you are Chow Kefi, President Chow, right? Chow Kefi laughed and reached out to shake hands with Zhou Qin. We met in a hurry at the last banquet. It's hard for you to remember me. Go to the internet. Literature. Zhou Qin smiled faintly and said, President Chow, as a celebrity in the film and television circle in Tian'an City, you are so beautiful. Of course, I have a deep impression of you. Why did you come to see Li Yundong today? Chow Kefi smiled and said, My company has been busy recently, so I shamelessly asked President Yin to borrow Li Yundong for a few days. Zhou Qin, you won't blame me, will you? Zhou Qin was very reluctant to see Li Yundong deal with a socialite like Chow Kefi. She was secretly unhappy, but it was not appropriate for her to show it here. She smiled politely and said, You are too polite, President Chow. Su Chan's big eyes looked at Zhou Qin, and then at Chow Kefi. She moved closer to Li Yundong's ear and whispered, Yundong, I'm hungry. Can we talk while we eat? Li Yundong smiled and pinched her nose. His doting feelings were not hidden from others at all. Chow Kefi had been paying attention to Li Yundong's every move. She saw that although there were many beautiful women around Li Yundong, he was extremely intimate with Su Chan. He kept a certain distance from the others. She was shocked in her heart and thought, This must be Li Yundong's girlfriend. She is really beautiful. I have traveled all over the country over the years, but I have never seen such a pure and coquettish girl. No wonder Li Yundong loves her so much. Although Chow Kefi was jealous in her heart, Su Chan was so innocent and lovely that she couldn't feel jealous at all. She smiled apologetically at Su Chan and said, You must be Li Yundong's girlfriend. Although Su Chan saw that Chow Kefi and Li Yundong looked intimate, she felt that there was a faint familiar aura on Chow Kefi's body, which made her not feel disgusted. Instead, she subconsciously felt a sense of closeness. She smiled brightly and said generously, Yes, hello. Chow Kefi shook hands with Su Chan and praised, What an outstanding beauty. If she were to make a movie, she would definitely be a hit. Li Yundong was secretly amused and thought to himself, Su Chan is a cultivator. Isn't it funny to ask her to make a movie? Moreover, this circle is so dark. I don't want my girl to get involved in this mess. Li Yundong said to Chow Kefi, President Chow, what can I do for you today? Chow Kefi just couldn't resist the desire in her heart, so she came to look for Li Yundong. What did she want? But if she couldn't answer now, she was afraid that she would be laughed at by these girls. She was the president of a dignified film and television company, but she had chased a little boy all the way to the school gate. If this got out, she was afraid that she would not be able to face the world in the future. See? Chow Kefi had an idea and showed a bitter smile. Alas, don't mention it. 2 big stars came to the company today. But I can't trust the people in the security department. After thinking about it, I can only find you. Chow Kefi looked at Li Yundong with pleading eyes. You won't leave me in the lurch, will you? Li Yundong hated this kind of look the most. He suddenly felt a headache. But I have an exam in the afternoon. Exam? Chow Kefi was stunned for a moment. She immediately took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. She directly called Principal Feng Yubin, then turned around and whispered a few words to him. When she turned back again, she smiled very proudly. Well, you don't have to take the exam. The school teachers will add your credits to the social internship credit. Go to C. 7K. OM. Literature. That works. Li Yundong's eyes widened. He smiled bitterly and said, You should have called me 2 days earlier. Chow Kefi didn't know that Li Yundong had been memorizing the books in the past 2 days. She thought that Li Yundong was blaming her for not contacting him 2 days earlier. For a moment, Chow Kefi was surprised and happy, like a little deer running around. Chow Kefi couldn't help beaming with joy and said, You agree? She then whispered, This kind of temporary outside work, the pay is very generous. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything. In view of the situation last time when Wan Hongling attacked Su Chan, Li Yundong really didn't dare to leave the girl alone. But he knew that he was really short of money at the moment. If there was a chance to make a fortune, he couldn't bear to miss it. After thinking for a long time, Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Damn it! If I had money, I wouldn't have to worry about so many trivial things. Li Yundong thought for a moment, then raised his head and said to Chow Kefi, Are we leaving now? Chow Kefi nodded hurriedly. Yes. Li Yundong said. Wait a minute. I have to discuss it with my girlfriend. As he said this, Li Yundong took Su Chan's hand and walked to the side whispering, I'm going to help President Chow with something. Li Yundong looked embarrassed and didn't know what to say next. However, Su Chan was smart and clever. She guessed Li Yundong's difficulties and said softly, Is it inconvenient to take me with you? Li Yundong looked at the little girl and saw the kindness and gentleness in her eyes. He was both moved and guilty. He held Su Chan's hand and said, Su Chan. Su Chan didn't wait for Li Yundong to finish and laughed. Yundong, you don't have to say anything. I understand. Now we are very short of money, right? You've been hiding it from me. Can't I see it? Yundong, go. A good man has ambitions. You don't have to worry about me. Li Yundong held the little girl tightly in his arms, loving her and saying, Why are you so obedient? I love you so much. Girl, aren't you afraid that I'll run away with those rich women? Su Chan giggled. Her face was both innocent and sly like a fox. She smiled and said, You're such a good girl. Are you willing to let me go? That's right. Of course not. Li Yundong loved Su Chan to the extreme. He was intimate with the little girl, as if there was no one else around. He said, But if I'm not here, what if you meet an enemy? The little girl thought for a moment, and carefully took out 2 paper talismans from her pocket. She kept one for herself and handed the other to Li Yundong. She whispered in a voice that only Li Yundong could hear. These are the 2 Thunder God talismans that my master left me to save my life. You keep one, and I keep the other. If you are in danger, use them. When I see the thunder strike, I will come to you. If you see a storm and thunder, come to me as soon as possible. Isn't that all right? Li Yundong took the talisman and looked at it. He saw that the talisman was dim yellow, like a page of an old calendar. It was thin and brittle. If he used a little force, the talisman would shatter. Li Yundong opened the talisman and saw that there were some strange symbols drawn on it. In the middle of the talisman, there were 4 murderous ancient seal characters. Heavenly thunder punishes evil. As soon as these 4 words jumped into Li Yundong's sight, he felt a creepy sense of power and pressure hit him in the face, making all the hair on his body stand on end with a whoosh. Li Yundong was shocked. His hand trembled, and the talisman almost fell to the ground. Su Chan quickly pressed the talisman into Li Yundong's palm and said in a low voice, This is the Divine Thunder Talisman of the 5 Thunder spell. As long as you transfer the Yuanyang Qi in your body into this talisman, you can attract heavenly thunder, but Su Chan tightened her grip on Li Yundong's hand, and her expression was surprisingly nervous and serious. You can't use this divine thunder talisman to deal with secular mortals, let alone use it easily, because the power of heaven is unpredictable. Be careful not to attract thunder to kill the enemy, and instead attract heavenly thunder to yourself, causing an unexpected disaster. Li Yundong was infected by Su Chan's expression, and he couldn't help but look solemn. He carefully put away the talisman and said, I know, you have to be more careful. By the way, it's not safe at home. Don't go back alone. You might as well find a place outside and wait for me. Li Yundong thought for a moment and smiled. Why don't you go to the amusement park we went to last time and wait for me there? As he said this, Li Yundong took out all the bills he had on him and stuffed them into the girl's pocket. After Su Chan finished explaining the important things, she looked at Li Yundong eagerly and said, Then I'll wait for you there. Li Yundong smiled and said, You can play as much as you want inside, but remember not to run around. Take your phone with you. Otherwise, I won't be able to find you. Su Chan shook her head. I don't want to play anything without you to accompany me. Li Yundong stroked the girl's head lovingly and said, Then I'll take you to play next time. Su Chan immediately beamed and stretched out her little finger. That's what you said. Don't go back on your word. And don't cry out in the middle of the game like last time. Li Yundong chuckled and made a pinky promise with the little girl, then gave Su Chan a reluctant look. Only then did he walk over to Zhou Qin, Ding Nan, and the others, saying apologetically, I'm sorry, I can't have lunch. When the girls saw that Li Yundong had even left his real girlfriend behind, they knew that he must have something important to do. They all smiled reasonably and said, Go and do your thing. Li Yundong smiled and said, Then I'll treat you next time. I'm sorry this time. After saying goodbye to Zhou Qin, Feng Na, and the others, Li Yundong said to Chao Kefi, President Chao, you've been waiting for a long time. Let's go now. Chao Kefi smiled and said, Why do you make it sound like we're going to part forever? After that, she got into the flashy Lamborghini. Li Yundong followed her into the passenger seat, and the two of them left quickly amid the roar of the engine. Only the boys at the school gate were left whispering to each other. Who was that just now? I don't know her. She's so beautiful. She must be some rich woman. Hey, Li Yundong isn't a sugar daddy, is he? No way. He's not that kind of person, is he? Humph. Do you really think there are people who won't bend over for money these days? Come on. No matter how handsome he is, do you think his face can be used to swipe a credit card? Sigh. Why can't I be that rich woman who drives a sports car? The inexperienced students were all talking about Li Yundong and Chao Kefi. It seemed that love was nothing in the face of worldly power. Lu Chuan stared at Li Yundong and Chao Kefi's backs as they walked away. His heart was bleeding with hatred. He just couldn't understand it. I'm better looking than Li Yundong, and I'm richer than him. Why do so many beautiful women keep trying to get close to me? Humph. The girl beside Lu Chuan said with a bitter look on her face. I thought you were so awesome, but in the end, you're just a sugar daddy. Lu Chuan turned his head and roared. Get in the car. Cut the crap. The girl was startled. She grumbled as she got into the car. But when she got into the car, the BMW X5, which she had thought was incomparably vain, now felt like a broken ox cart. Ding Nan stood next to Zhou Qin. The two sisters, who were usually inseparable, looked like they were in perfect harmony. Ding Nan sneered as she watched the Lamborghini disappear into the distance. Did you see that, Zhou Qin? An unmarried, outstanding man is like a treasure without an owner. Any ambitious woman would want to take him for herself. This is war. Zhou Qin's gloomy eyes darkened even further. She gave Ding Nan a sidelong glance. What are you trying to say? Ding Nan smiled. You know what I'm trying to say. After that, she turned around and left without saying goodbye to Feng Na, Cheng Cheng, and the others. She didn't even mention lunch. Li Yundong's departure left Feng Na and the others dispirited. Su Chan, on the other hand, stared blankly in the direction Li Yundong had left. She suddenly felt an emptiness in her heart. C/om/ Chapter 132. Go to Watch Network. Chow Kefi and Li Yundong drove to the city center. Li Yundong saw that she didn't drive to the Dongxing building, so he asked, "Aren't we going to your company?" Chow Kefi smiled and said, "The company? That won't do." This time, Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei came to Tiannan City in secret. "I'm only responsible for reception and security work. If I bring them to the company, those gossips will spread all over the world in less than 2 days. Go to the Kanban network." Look. Li Yundong was surprised and said, "Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei? What are they doing in Tiannan City?" Chow Kefi looked at Li Yundong and said with a smile, "They are the male and female leads of a TV series I'm planning to shoot recently. They came here to have some fun." Li Yundong smiled and said, "What do you want me to do?" Chow Kefi sighed and said, "You saw it last time. The people who asked me for debts were very fierce. If anything goes wrong, I don't want to work in this industry anymore. These two are big shots, and I can't afford to offend them. If there is any grievance, you have to take care of it for me, right?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "I took money from others to eliminate disasters. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Chow Kefi looked at Li Yundong from time to time as she drove. She hadn't seen him for a few days, and she liked this little boy who was several years younger than her. She was so moved that she reached out to touch Li Yundong's cheek, ignoring that she was driving. Li Yundong was startled and pointed to the road ahead. "Look at the car." Chow Kefi was startled by Li Yundong's voice. She quickly turned her head and turned the steering wheel. The front of the Lamborghini shook a little and then returned to normal. Chow Kefi's cheeks were red, and her heart was beating wildly. She couldn't help blushing. She felt as if she had returned to her first love. "Why can't I help it when I think of him?" Chow Kefi stole a glance at Li Yundong, only to see that the boy seemed to be frightened by her actions just now. He sat a little farther away from her. She sighed in her heart. "I wasn't like this before," she thought to herself. "So really, could it be that he was my nemesis in my previous life?" Chow Kefi was absent-minded all the way. Li Yundong had a lot of questions to ask Chow Kefi, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid that if she was absent-minded, he would die a useless death. Watch net. 7K. OMC. Fortunately, they arrived at their destination without any mishaps. When he got out of the car, he saw that it was the Shenyuan International Hotel, where Zhou Qin had held her birthday party last time. The waiter's eyes lit up at the sight of the flashy and luxurious Lamborghini. He stepped forward and couldn't help but look Li Yundong up and down, secretly wondering who this young man was. Chow Kefi led him into the hall, then took him to the coffee shop. She found a relatively hidden seat against the wall and sat down. Chow Kefi smiled and said, "Sit for a while. I'll be right back." Li Yundong nodded and turned his head to look around. Chow Kefi walked to the women's restroom and called her secretary. "Hello, little Zhang?" "Yes, it's me. When will Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei arrive? Will they be here soon?" "What about Delu, who is in charge of security?" No, don't look for him. Tell him that things have changed, and he doesn't need to come." "Well, I changed someone else at the last minute." "What? Don't you know how to tell him? Do you want me to tell him? Do you want me to find someone who knows how to tell him?" Chow Kefi hung up the phone and scolded in a low voice. "Why are the girls nowadays so immature? How dare you ask me to tell him? Isn't this a joke? Why did I ask you to be my secretary?" Li Yundong waited in his seat for about 10 minutes, but Chow Kefi didn't come. He was really bored, so he took out the thunder talisman in his pocket and opened it to take a closer look. The paper of this talisman was very strange. It looked like it could be torn with a little force, but in fact, when Li Yundong tried to tear it with his hands, he found that the paper was harder than he had imagined. He tried to tear it with a little force, but it couldn't be torn at all. When he used a little more force, the thunder talisman suddenly shook and shook Li Yundong's hand away. A burst of blue light appeared, and then it slowly fell on the table. Watch net. Rainbow * asterisk literature _ learning % super # speed. Update. Look. Li Yundong was so scared that his little heart was beating wildly. He looked around nervously, but fortunately, there were not many people in the cafe at this time. No one noticed his abnormality, and Li Yundong felt relieved. This talisman can attract the 9 heavens thunder? Although Li Yundong had already seen the little girl's invisibility technique, and he had seized Wan Hongling's magical item, he still felt that things like immortal magic were very distant and magical, especially to attract thunder from the sky. This made him feel especially excited and mysterious. Since there are really cultivators and immortals in this world, will there be demons and ghosts? Li Yunyang suddenly thought of something. But why does no one else in the world know anything about it? Was it hidden well? Or was there some other reason? Li Yundong sat in his seat puzzled. After a while, Chao Kefi came over. Li Yundong quietly put away the thunder talisman. Chao Kefi smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry they're late. You know big stars love to be late." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Anyway, I have nothing to do." After waiting for more than 2 hours, Li Yundong and Chao Kefi had drunk more than a dozen cups of coffee, and the 2 big stars finally arrived. Alas, they're finally here. Chao Kefi sighed, full of resentment, but her face was full of smiles. She stood up and greeted them with a smile. Li Yundong also stood up and looked at the 2 big stars who had made them wait for nearly an afternoon. A man and a woman walked toward them. The man was about 30 years old, about 1.8 meters tall, and had a square face. Although he was dressed casually, his clothes were all famous brands. He wore a pair of big sunglasses on his face, so his face could not be seen clearly. The other woman was dressed fashionably. She was wearing a Polynesian-style grass-colored dress and a pair of white ribbon high heels. She had a slim figure and was very eye-catching. Just like the man beside her, she also wore big sunglasses on her face. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing and said, "Is it a professional habit for people in your industry to wear sunglasses?" Chao Kefi looked straight ahead and said with a smile, "Yes, there are a lot of problems in this industry, especially for stars like them. There are often a lot of paparazzi following them when they go out. It's very troublesome." While they were talking, Zhang Guozheng and Tan Fei had already walked up to them. Chao Kefi greeted them with a smile. "Just the 2 of you? Where's your agent?" Zhang Guozheng took off his sunglasses, revealing a handsome face full of masculinity, but the corners of his eyes were slightly upturned, making him look a little frivolous. He looked at Chao Kefi with a flash of amazement and greed in his eyes. He smiled and shook hands with Chao Kefi. They went to put their luggage in first. "I came to meet our president Chao first." As he said this, he looked at Li Yundong, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. "Is this your brother?" Chao Kefi laughed, pulled Li Yundong over, and introduced him. "This is the bodyguard responsible for the safety of your group on this trip. His name is Li Yundong. Although he is young, he is a great master." Li Yundong nodded at him in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Hello." Zhang Guozheng smiled disapprovingly and did not shake hands with Li Yundong. The look in his eyes was very disapproving, and he sneered in his heart. "You're a new toy boy. Great master? What are you pretending for?" Although Zhang Guozheng looked very masculine, in terms of heroic spirit, he was far inferior to Li Yundong. Moreover, Li Yundong's strong Yuanyang aura made any man who got close to him feel repulsed. This was the same sex repels each other. However, the opposite sex did not all attract each other. Tan Shui had not looked at Li Yundong carefully since she came in. She just stared at Chao Kefi with deep disdain and jealousy in her eyes. She said in a strange tone, "Great master? Are there great masters these days? I think they are all silver and wax spears, right? I don't think this little brother is an adult, right?" Chao Kefi was secretly unhappy and looked at Li Yundong worriedly. But Li Yundong's face was as calm as water, and she could not tell whether he was happy or angry. She forced a smile and tried to smooth things over. "You can't judge people by their appearance." "Can't judge people by their appearance?" Tan Shui took off her sunglasses and carefully looked at Li Yundong. Suddenly, she was stunned, and a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Little brother, you look good. President Chao, you're good. The quality of the goods this time is very high." Li Yundong frowned and was angry in his heart, but his face remained calm. Chao Kefi was already a little angry. She said, Tan Shui, this is a master I specially invited. Don't talk nonsense. Tan Shui sneered and said, President Chow, please calm down. I was just saying. As she said this, she winked at Li Yundong. Hey, great master, why don't you perform? Let me broaden my horizons, okay? Tan Shui was a new film and television star in China recently. She appeared on the screen as a pure and innocent girl. Even Li Yundong, who didn't watch soap operas, knew this woman. However, he had never expected that today, this so-called pure and innocent girl would be so unbearable. My girl is still the best, Li Yundong thought to himself. Li Yundong smiled at Tan Shui and said, Big sister, if you want to see a sideshow, please take Route 381 to the Lion Garden. There is a zoo there, and you can see all kinds of sideshows. Tan Shui's face changed. Chow Kefi, who was next to her, held back her laughter and tried to smooth things over. All right. Sit down and talk. Do you want to be chased by fans for autographs? Tan Shui snorted and glanced at Li Yundong provocatively. She muttered in a low voice, Pretentious fool. Although she had spoken in a low voice, Li Yundong heard it clearly. He became more and more impatient. If it weren't for Chow Kefi's face, he would have left in a huff. Li Yundong sneered in his heart. These stars are bright and beautiful on the screen. I didn't expect them to be so vulgar. C/OM/. Chapter 133. Go to watch net. After they sat down, Zhang Guozheng took the initiative to talk to Chow Kefi and flattered her without batting an eyelid. Go to watch net. Go to watch net. Although Tan Shui was also a first-class beauty, compared with Chow Kefi, she was a notch lower. She saw that Zhang Guozheng, who had been flattering her all the way, had turned to another person so quickly. She was jealous and resentful, and even Li Yundong was not pleasing to the eye. Zhang Guozheng had been talking about what he had seen and heard all this time, with no lack of bragging and showing off. From time to time, his eyes swept over Li Yundong, who was silent opposite him, full of superiority. Chow Kefi had been in this circle for so long, so she was naturally quite sensitive to these things. She smiled and talked to Zhang Guozheng, while paying attention to Li Yundong's mood faintly, for fear that the boy could not help but leave in anger. But the more Chow Kefi paid attention to Li Yundong, the more unhappy Zhang Guozheng was, and the more he showed off. Hey, let me tell you, there was a martial arts actor in a martial arts film last time. He was really amazing. Zhang Guozheng said, dancing with his hands and spitting. That guy with one elbow smashed 3 blue bricks. 3 blue bricks, not prop bricks or red bricks, but the kind of blue bricks that were baked in the stone kiln. Damn. With one hit, they were all smashed. That's a real master. Hey, can you do it? Zhang Guozheng was talking extravagantly when he suddenly led the topic to Li Yundong. Li Yundong glanced at him, smiled, and did not speak. There was a different meaning hidden in his smile, like a silent lion looking at a barking wild dog. This kind of smile made Zhang Guozheng very unhappy. He said, Hey, what are you laughing at? Are you looking down on me or something? Chow Kefi quickly came out to smooth things over and changed the topic. Guozheng, go on. I'm listening attentively. Zhang Guozheng glanced at Li Yundong, smiled disdainfully, and then continued to talk nonsense. Tan Shui was a little tired of listening to him, so she turned her eyes and began to look him up and down. Although they had looked down on this boy from the beginning, he did not show the slightest bit of anger or agitation. On the contrary, he exuded a calmness that did not match his age. Tan Shui looked at Li Yundong from head to toe. He's a good boy, Tan Shui said, sizing Li Yundong up. It's rare to see such a heroic boy in the circle these days. Where did Chow Kefi find him? TSK. I wonder how much a month's rent is? The entertainment industry was a big dive at. It was not uncommon for men to be mistresses of women, and vice versa. Many people love to talk about news like, which female star is being kept by which rich man? But in fact, many handsome male stars who had just debuted were also kept by rich women. After Tan Shui looked at Li Yundong for a while, she suddenly had an idea. Under the cover of the table, she gently touched his calf with her foot. Watch net. 7K. OM. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning percent super hashtag speed. Update. Look. Li Yundong felt the movement under the table. He frowned and quietly sat back a little. Tan Shui sneered inwardly. Damn it, still pretending to be innocent. I don't believe you can keep pretending for long. She leaned her upper body on the table and leaned forward slightly, revealing her full and deep cleavage for Li Yundong to see. Tan Shui's expression did not change, but she inadvertently glanced at Li Yundong. Her eyes were full of seduction. She reached out her foot again, under the table to touch his calf. This time, Li Yundong had nowhere to hide. He was angry. Who are these people? Even the bodies in the sauna are much more luxurious than theirs. Li Yundong coughed dryly and stood up. I'm going to the bathroom, he said to Chow Kefi. Chow Kefi nodded at him with a smile. Tan Shui rolled her eyes and smiled. Me too. Then she followed Li Yundong out of the bathroom. When Li Yundong reached the door of the bathroom, he heard a delicate voice behind him. Hey handsome, why are you so heartless? Are you angry at me just now? Li Yundong turned his head and saw Tan Shui smiling at him seductively. Li Yundong smiled politely and said, Miss Tan Shui, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll talk to you later, okay? Tan Shui saw that there was no one around, so she bravely leaned over and giggled. Why are you in such a hurry? Hey, Chow Kefi said that you are a master. I think you are a master in bed, right? How much money does she pay you every month? I'll give you as much as you want. How about you come with me? Good. You think I'm a male prostitute? Li Yundong was burning with anger. He sneered and said, Then go ask President Chow. Excuse me. After saying that, he went into the bathroom. Go to see the net. 7K. OM.C. Tan Shui was so angry that she stamped her feet and cursed in a low voice. Damn it. I gave you face, but you don't want it. What's so great about you? F***CK. After that, she also rushed into the bathroom angrily. She looked at herself in the mirror and panted. What's so good about Chow Kefi? Am I worse than her? Humph toy boy, don't be arrogant. Just wait and see. Li Yundong went into the bathroom. After a while, Zhang Guozheng also came in. He stood next to the urinal next to Li Yundong, unzipped his pants, looked at Li Yundong, and sneered. Young man, the food in this circle is not delicious. If you don't have 3/3, don't go to Liangshan. If you don't have a diamond, don't take on this porcelain work. As he said that, he reached out a hand and wanted to pat Li Yundong on the shoulder. Li Yundong glanced at his hand and dodged it quietly. Zhang Guozheng's face darkened. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a voice coming from the bathroom. Maoshan true beating kung fu. The 8 martials show their magic power. It is as urgent as the law, the great demon subduing emperor of the 3 realms. The holy emperor Guan, please come to me. As soon as the voice sounded, Li Yundong felt a chill run down his spine. He immediately pulled up his pants and turned around. With a bang, a door flew out of the bathroom, and a burly bare-chested man walked out. His muscles were like tree roots. It was Lin Yu, who had fought with Li Yundong before. It's you. Li Yundong's chi suddenly surged, and the bones in his body crackled. He was extremely vigilant, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Zhang Guozheng, who was peeing, suddenly saw this scene. He was so shocked that his body trembled, and a large area of his pants was wet. He stammered, You. Before he could finish his words, he saw Lin Yu look at Li Yundong with a proud face and say, Jinrenli, we meet again. This time, no one else will intervene. Let's fight here. Li Yundong knew that it was a blessing, not a curse. If it was a curse, he couldn't avoid it. He took a deep breath and mobilized all the essence qi and qi in his body. The qi of his 5 internal organs also flew to the top of his head, and then quickly dispersed to all parts of his body. This was the gathering of 3 flowers and 5 qis in one's head. Lin Yu's body could change from an old man in his 50s or 90s to a young man in his 20s or 30s by mobilizing the primordial qi hidden deep in his body and the divine qi borrowed from heaven and earth. Li Yundong mobilized the huge and vigorous Jindan's primordial qi in his body. Although he couldn't form an extremely strong physical change like Lin Yu's, the muscles on the surface of his body also bulged, and his blood vessels protruded one by one. They were as hard as stones. Lin Yu cupped his hands and said, "Generally, I'm sorry. Today, I must decide the winner between us. Let's see whether your sect is stronger, or my immortal fist sect is stronger." After that, he opened his eyes angrily. With a snap, he stepped forward quickly, with his right fist in front, and his left fist behind. A short punch went straight to Li Yundong's chest. Li Yundong knew that he couldn't use his full strength in the bathroom, so it was most suitable for his opponent to fight at close range. Therefore, without thinking, he imitated Lin Yu's moves and met them head-on, using strength to defeat strength, using violence to control violence. As soon as the two of them got close, there was a crackling sound of hand-to-hand combat. Zhang Guozheng, who was standing to one side, had goosebumps all over his body when he heard it. He stood there in a daze, staring at Li Yundong, who was fighting fiercely with Lin Yu, without any reaction at all. Tan Shui, who was in the women's restroom, was touching up her makeup in front of the mirror. She kept cursing Li Yundong. She had been in the entertainment industry for several years, but she had never seen such a pretentious guy. "Why are you so arrogant? Humph, who do you think you are?" Tan Shui sneered. She was about to take out her lipstick and wipe it on her mouth when she suddenly heard a rumbling sound. Tan Shui was stunned. She muttered unconsciously, "What's going on?" Then there was another rumbling sound, and the water in the sink in front of her trembled. Tan Shui was stunned and said, "Earthquake? Tian'an City is not in the earthquake zone." Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound. The bricks in the wall in front of her were sent flying, and a big hole was broken. Two entangled figures flew out like cannonballs. Tan Shui was so scared that her hands trembled, and her lipstick fell to the ground. Her mind went blank. She saw Lin Yu punch Li Yundong in the chest. Li Yundong groaned, and his hands suddenly expanded. He grabbed Lin Yu's body and threw him behind him. With a bang, Lin Yu knocked the door of the bathroom to the ground, and then smashed the toilet bowl into pieces. The moment Li Yundong threw Lin Yu, he quickly stepped forward and stomped on him. Lin Yu's waist sprang up like a spring, and his whole body bounced up. He flew into Li Yundong's arms, hugged his waist, and slammed him into the wall again. With a bang, the broken bricks in the wall fell everywhere. Li Yundong was hugged by Lin Yu's waist, and his back hit the wall again. His body shook, and before he could fight back, Lin Yu's fists fell on his lower abdomen like rain. But the lower abdomen of the human body was the lower dantian, and it was the place where qi was the most vigorous. As long as one cultivated it well, it would be one of the places where one could take a beating. Li Yundong felt the punches on his abdomen like rain, but he gritted his teeth and grabbed Lin Yu's waist. With a loud roar, he lifted Lin Yu up, and then like a falling onion, he slammed Lin Yu's head into the hard marble sink. With a bang, Lin Yu's head hit the marble sink, and a big hole appeared. Li Yundong's fist came smashing down on his head. Lin Yu heard the fierce wind behind his head, and he immediately broke free from Li Yundong's grip like a loach. He dodged to the side, and then there was a loud bang. Li Yundong's fist smashed the marble sink into pieces. Lin Yu was depressed. He had thought that by finding a narrow space, he could completely subdue Li Yundong and vent his anger. But no matter what he did, Li Yundong would follow his moves, just like last time at the school gate. After a few rounds, Lin Yu realized that no matter what moves he made, Li Yundong would immediately know as if he had a telepathic connection. Therefore, he simply didn't make any moves. The two of them fought hand-to-hand like hooligans. Lin Yu rolled a few times on the ground and gasped violently. He stared at Li Yundong fiercely and said, "Zhenren Li is really good at martial arts. But you use my moves to deal with me. What kind of skill is that?" All of Li Yundong's clothes had been torn to shreds. He reached out and tore them off, revealing his strong muscles that were not inferior to Lin Yu's. He sneered and said, "It doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat. As long as it can catch mice, it's a good cat." After that, he opened his eyes and shouted. The qi in his body surged to his right fist, and a fierce fist aura blasted toward Lin Yu. As he waved his fist, 3 cracking sounds came from Li Yundong's arm, like firecrackers exploding one after another. The surface of the fist compressed the air to the point that the shock waves could be seen spreading around with the naked eye. Take this. Look. /om/. Chapter 134. Go to watch net. Lin Yu knew that this punch was extremely fierce, and it was filled with pure yang qi. It was difficult to resist, so he rolled away and dodged the attack. Go to watch net. Go to watch net. The punch landed on the marble sink, and with a muffled bang, the surface of the sink could no longer withstand the impact. With a crash, the bottom shelf fell down and smashed at Tan Shue's feet. Tan Shue's body trembled, and her expression twisted in horror. She opened her mouth and wanted to shout, but her voice was hoarse, and she couldn't shout at all. All she could think of was, who the hell is this guy? Lin Yu dodged Li Yundong's heavy punch, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. He quickly took out a golden needle from the seam of his shoe, and inserted it into his Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. His other hand quickly pinched a finger and he shouted, Maoshan True Beating God Kung Fu. The 8 martials show their magic power. As urgent as the law, Jiutian Shang Fu, Generals Wu Yuan of the North Pole, Marshal Tian Peng, please come to me. Li Yundong was stunned. Another god? What kind of god is it this time? Why is it so convenient for this guy to invite gods, as if he's treating a guest? Jiutian Shang Fu, Generals Wu Yuan of the North Pole, Marshal Tian Peng? What the hell is this? Wait. Grand Marshal Tian Peng Perfected Lord? The expression on Li Yundong's face suddenly became very strange. Did he ask Marshal Canopy to possess him? Who is Marshal Tian Peng? Everyone on Earth knows. Zhu Beiji. Even though he was facing a powerful enemy, Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. He was about to speak when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Yundong dodge. It was Su Chan's voice. Li Yundong subconsciously dodged to the side. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang coming from the side for no reason. A huge pit had been smashed on the ground. If he was hit, he would probably be turned into a mass of meat paste immediately. Li Yundong looked at Lin Yu in horror, his heart beating wildly. He saw that Lin Yu's body had expanded a little. At this time, he looked nearly 2 meters tall. His whole body was purplish red, and the blood vessels on his body were like dark red snakes twisting and circling around his body. It was extremely terrifying. Jiutian Shang Fu. Net. Super_speed. More. New look. At this moment, this person's eyes were filled with terrifying golden light. His entire person was like a purple gold war god that had descended from the heavens to the mortal world, majestic and insufferably arrogant. Holy sh*t. Li Yundong said, startled. Is this guy on steroids? Was it that exaggerated? How could asking Zhu Beiji to possess him be more powerful than Guan Yu? Is there any justice in this world? Su Chan's voice rang in Li Yundong's ear again. Yundong, come out quickly. Don't fight with him at this time. This kind of god-inviting technique has a time limit. You haven't mastered it yet, so you're no match for him. Come out now. Out of absolute trust in Su Chan, Li Yundong immediately jumped into the men's washroom next door, then quickly ran out of the hotel. Where do you think you're going? Lin Yu shouted, his voice shaking the broken wall and causing the lime powder to fall straight down. Then, his footsteps rumbled as he chased after Li Yundong. For a moment, the washroom, which had been turned upside down a moment ago, suddenly became as silent as a graveyard. Tan Shui and Zhang Guozheng, who were equally dumbfounded, stood motionless as if they had been petrified. The two of them stared at each other through the big hole in the wall. After a while, a piece of crumbling lime fell from the hole in the men's and women's washroom and hit the ground. Only then did the two of them wake up from their stupor. Tan Shui was dumbfounded. She reached out and touched the big hole in the wall, as if she wanted to see what material the wall was made of. How could such a big hole have been broken by someone so easily? But when she reached out to touch it, the tiles on the hole almost cut her delicate fingertips. It was so painful that she immediately withdrew her hand. The pain clearly told her that everything in front of her was real. How is this possible? Tan Shui stammered. Zhang Guozheng, on the other hand, had been in the position of peeing since the beginning of the fight between Li Yundong and Lin Guo. By the time he came to his senses, his pants were already soaked. He quickly put on his pants, looked at the wall in front of him, and then looked at his clenched fists. Then he punched the wall. Go to see. 7K. Oh, Hong. Look. With a muffled thud, Zhang Guozheng squatted down with his fists clenched. What's wrong? What's wrong? The hotel's security guards rushed over at this time. As soon as they entered the washroom, they sucked in a breath of cold air. They were stunned when they saw Tan Shui and Zhang Guozheng standing in the washroom. Hey, aren't you two celebrities? What happened to this place? The security guards suddenly became excited. They looked around and asked, Are you guys filming a movie? Where's the director? Where's the camera? Zhang Guozheng and Tan Shui looked at each other speechless. Li Yundong didn't even have time to say goodbye to Chow Kefi and rushed out of the hotel's revolving door. As soon as he went out, he saw Su Chan coming up to him. She took his hand and ran saying, Let's go. His divine power will disappear in 5 minutes. Li Yundong asked curiously, Why are you here? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong eagerly. I'm worried about you. Li Yundong chuckled. The unhappiness he had caused with Tan Shui and Zhang Guozheng had flown away. He turned his head and saw that Lin Guo was chasing after him, like a rampaging beast. He even smashed the revolving glass door of the hotel, causing the doorman and security guards at the door to shout. As Li Yundong ran, he asked loudly, Is this guy done? By the way, didn't you say that cultivators are very low-key? Why is this guy so arrogant? Su Chan looked back. She took Li Yundong's hand and ran all the way shouting, How would I know? Maybe there's something wrong with this guy's head. Li Yundong and Su Chan ran all the way like parkour. They were agile and moved like the wind. Some passers-by stopped and looked at them. Some curiously wanted to take out their mobile phones to take pictures. But as soon as they took out their phones, the two of them disappeared. After Lin Guo had asked the second god to possess him, although his strength had greatly increased, his speed had decreased a lot. Seeing that he couldn't catch up with Li Yundong and Su Chan, he snorted coldly, raised his hand to pull out the golden needle inserted in the Baihui acupoint on his head, and then quickly disappeared around the corner of the street. Li Yundong and Su Chan ran for a long time. Seeing that Lin Yu didn't chase after them again, he breathed a sigh of relief. Is this guy on stimulants? So exaggerated? By the way, why is Marshal Tianping more powerful than Guan Yu? It doesn't make sense. Su Chan said, Marshal Tianping is in charge of the Big Dipper. He is one of the 8 marshals in the Heaven Realm. Naturally, he is much more powerful than Guan Yu. Li Yundong was stunned. Then Zhu Beiji and the journey to the west was so useless. Su Chan laughed. Can the journey to the west be taken seriously? Li Yundong muttered to himself. The thing about asking Marshal Tianping to possess him has already happened. What else can't be taken seriously? He said to Su Chan. Then what should we do now? Go home. Su Chan thought for a moment and said, Go to a crowded place. We'll talk about it later. Standing on the roof of a building not far away, Zi Yuan, who was watching all of this from above, frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Is the god-tapping sect so presumptuous now? What nonsense! Wan Hongling, who was standing to one side, asked, Sister Zi Yuan, how long are we going to watch them like this? Zi Yuan pondered for a moment and said, Don't worry, let's wait and see. Wan Hongling was anxious and angry. She couldn't wait to take back her magical item from Li Yundong's hands. But she didn't dare to disobey her senior sister's wishes. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat and she said, Sister Zi Yuan, I'll go and take a look. After saying that, her body moved and disappeared in an instant. Zi Yuan couldn't stop Wan Hongling. As soon as she opened her mouth, she saw that Wan Hongling had disappeared. She let out a long sigh and shook her head. She didn't chase after her, but just looked in the direction where Li Yundong was in the distance. After turning a few corners, Lin Yu's body gradually returned to the physique of a normal person. From a young man in his 20s or 30s, He had once again become a thin old man with wrinkles all over his body. Lin Yu turned his head and looked in the direction where Li Yundong was. He snorted coldly and said, "You run fast." As he said that, he turned back and saw a slim and graceful girl standing in front of him. The girl was wearing a high school uniform and was extremely beautiful. Her hair was tied in a ponytail, revealing a full and bright forehead. Lin Yu's eyes flashed with amazement. He laughed and said, "Little sister, get out of the way. Don't block my way." However, the girl made a gesture, bowed and said, "Amateus, Ruan Hongling, the 45th generation disciple of Jinren Wang of the Shangqing sect of Mount Longhu of the Southern Taoist sect, greets you." Lin Yu's expression suddenly became serious. He cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. "It turns out to be the supreme Taoist master. I'm Lin Yu, a disciple of Jilong Huang." Ruan Hongling was young, but at this time, her words and actions were very old. She formed a palm with one hand and clasped her thumb in front of her chest. She said, "May I know why you are here?" Lin Yu sighed, waved his hand and said, "Alas, my disciple is clumsy and stubborn. I lost in a competition, so I came to get back at him." Ruan Hongling immediately asked, "Do you have a grudge against someone named Li Yundong?" Lin Yu was stunned and said, "How do you know?" A trace of hatred flashed in the corner of Ruan Hongling's eyes. "Is there another witch with him?" Lin Yu suddenly became vigilant. "My dear friend, what do you want to do?" Ruan Hongling sneered and said, "How about I join forces with you to deal with them? I'll deal with that witch, and you'll deal with Li Yundong." This, Lin Yu pondered for a moment, and was a little hesitant. After all, he was a famous person in the cultivation world. But if he joined forces with the people of the Jingyi school to deal with two juniors, his reputation would be a little bad. Seeing his hesitation, Ruan Hongling tried to persuade him. "Everyone has the right to punish evil spirits. Li Yundong is with a witch, so he must not be a good person. Jinren Lin, why don't you take this opportunity to enforce justice on behalf of heaven? Even if others find out about this in the future, they will praise you for your chivalry." Lin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He raised his head and nodded slowly. "Okay, then when shall we do it?" Ruan Hongling was overjoyed and said, "There's no time to lose. Let's hurry up and catch up. As soon as there are fewer people around, we'll take action immediately." C/OM/ Chapter 135. Go to watch net. Li Yundong and Su Chan hid in the pedestrian street in the center of the city for a while. Seeing that Lin hadn't followed them, they slowly relaxed their vigilance. The girl began to look at the pedestrian street curiously. She pulled Li Yundong's arm and said, "Yundong, I think this place looks so familiar." Li Yundong smiled and said, "You silly girl, isn't this the place where we bought clothes last time?" Su Chan's eyes suddenly lit up. "I still want to buy clothes." Li Yundong was so scared that he shivered. He thought to himself, "Don't joke. The last time I bought clothes I went bankrupt. If you buy clothes again, won't I have to sell my kidney?" Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan. "Why buy clothes? I don't have money." "Oh," Su Chan said. She pouted and tugged at Li Yundong's shirt to follow him. At the same time, she stared at the various clothes on both sides of the street. After a while, she couldn't help but say weakly, "I'm just looking. I'm not buying anything, okay?" Li Yundong was worried. He smiled bitterly and said, "If I had money, I would buy these 2 streets for you. Go to watch net. Literature. But now we don't have money, do we?" Su Chan nodded again and reluctantly looked away. She held Li Yundong's arm and said, "Sir, this girl must be making things difficult for you, right?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "What is it difficult for me?" Su Chan said pitifully, "This girl always makes you spend money. You won't dislike me, will you?" Li Yundong said with heartache and self-blame, "What nonsense are you talking about? It's my fault. I should make a lot of money for this girl to spend." Speaking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh again. It's not easy to get a job from President Chow, but now it seems that it's ruined again. Alas, I have a grudge against money in this life. Su Chan comforted him softly. Sir, you will definitely be very rich in the future. I have confidence in you. Li Yundong fixed his eyes on Su Chan for a long time. He was moved and smiled. Girl, why are you so obedient? Su Chan giggled, and her eyes narrowed into a line. Girl, you're so obedient. Do you like me? Li Yundong waved his hand. Of course I like it. Su Chan grinned from ear to ear. I like myself too. Li Yundong laughed heartily and rubbed the little girl's head. You're so cute, he said. Let's go. I can't afford to buy clothes for you today, but I can still afford to take you to a snack. Su Chan screamed and dodged his claws. She was just about to pout when she heard that he was going to take her to eat something. Okay, I want to eat that. As he spoke, he pointed at the barbecued squid skewers in front of the stall on the pedestrian street. Watch net. Rainbow * asterisk literature _ learning % super # speed. Update. Look. Li Yundong hesitated for a moment. This stuff is really spicy. Aren't you afraid of getting pimples on your face? Su Chan giggled. I've been in the Zhuji phase for a long time. I'm not afraid. Li Yundong sighed. Now that you mention it, I just remembered that I haven't reached the Zhuji phase yet. I've been delayed by the troubles of the secular world. Su Chan smiled. You'll reach the Zhuji phase when we get back. Don't worry. Let's eat first. Li Yundong nodded and took Su Chan to the barbecue stall. He bought 9 skewers of grilled squid, 3 for each of them. They ate as they walked. When they reached the entrance of McDonald's, Su Chan pointed at the fake McDonald's and said, I want to eat the ice cream here. Li Yundong smiled lovingly. Okay. The two of them walked to the ice cream delivery window. Li Yundong said, 2 sundaes please. The waiter behind the window asked, what flavor? Li Yundong turned his head and asked Su Chan, what flavor do you want? Su Chan was enjoying the grilled squid so much that she sucked in a breath of cold air. She fanned her mouth and asked, what flavors do you have? There are chocolate, vanilla, taro and other flavors, the waiter said. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong at a loss. She didn't know what the 3 flavors were. She looked at the grilled squid in her hand and suddenly asked, do you have a spicy flavor? The corner of the waiter's eyes twitched. She didn't know how to answer, so she looked at Li Yundong as if asking for help. Li Yundong laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. His mischievous spirit returned, and he said to the waiter seriously, the little girl is naughty. Just ignore her. The waiter laughed a few times and asked dryly, what flavor do you want? Li Yundong thought about it seriously and said, give her a garlic flavor. The corner of the waiter's eyes twitched again. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she looked at Li Yundong's serious face and felt that he didn't seem to be joking. So she explained patiently, sir, we don't have these 2 flavors of ice cream here. Go to CNET. Rainbow * asterisk literature _ learning % super # fast. Update. See. Li Yundong said in surprise. Really? But I have all kinds of food at KFC. The waiter was shocked. Ah, KFC sells spicy and garlic sundaes? Li Yundong looked even more surprised than she was. What? You didn't know? The waiter looked frightened and confused. I didn't know. Li Yundong tried hard to hold back his laughter. He laughed so hard that his intestines were about to break. He said with a look of blame, hey, you guys can't keep up with the evolution of the varieties. Forget it. Just give me a vanilla and a chocolate one. Alas, what a killjoy. The waiter made 2 sundaes for Li Yundong and handed them to him. Li Yundong searched his body and found that he had given all his money to Su Chan. He said to her, hey, pay up. Su Chan nodded and took out the money and handed it to Li Yundong. After Li Yundong paid the bill, he dragged Su Chan away, sighing as he walked. The waiter looked at him in bewilderment. Does KFC really have spicy and garlic sundaes? The waiter muttered to himself. What's that smell? Is it edible? I'll try it after work. Li Yundong and Su Chan walked to a corner and hid there, laughing with their bellies full. Su Chan stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes as she ate her ice cream. She didn't understand why he was laughing like that. Su Chan ate her ice cream for a while. Suddenly she thought of something and shouted, No, no. Didn't you treat me to it? Why do I have to pay for it? Li Yundong laughed. Hey little girl. You're still fussing over this? Su Chan smiled shyly. I heard on TV that if a girl controls a man's money, they can't run away. Li Yundong laughed and pinched Su Chan's nose. I knew it. Watching soap operas is bad for you. Okay, I'll let you control it. Come on. I'll take you to buy something for your money. After that, Li Yundong took Su Chan on a stroll down the pedestrian street until they found a shop that sold trinkets. He picked out a pink He11 Kitty piggy bank with a key lock and handed it to Su Chan. You can deposit your money in this from now on, he said. Handing it to Su Chan smiled and hugged the piggy bank. It's so pretty. I like it. Li Yundong laughed. You like it, right? Su Chan nodded and skipped out of the store. Li Yundong quickly pulled her back. Hey, give me the money. Ah, me again? Su Chan said, then reluctantly fished out the money from her pocket. Ha! Su Chan said, then reluctantly pulled out the money. Li Yundong laughed. I didn't know you were such a miser, he said, poking a finger on her forehead. Su Chan held the piggy bank tightly with one hand and covered her forehead with the other. She made a face at Li Yundong. After buying the eggs, Su Chan carefully stuffed the money into the piggy bank with her back to Li Yundong. When she finished stuffing the last note into the piggy bank, Li Yundong suddenly walked up to her and snatched the piggy bank from her. Then, he raised it up high and laughed proudly. Su Chan had no idea what was going on. Su Chan was furious. She clung to Li Yundong like a koala bear and tried to snatch the piggy bank from his hand. Give it back. You bad guy. Give it back. Li Yundong laughed and played with Su Chan for a while. Then, he handed the piggy bank back to her. Su Chan took the piggy bank and looked at it carefully. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. After looking at it for a long time, she found that the piggy bank was locked. She smacked her head and pounced on Li Yundong again. Key. Give me back the key. Li Yundong laughed and clenched his fists. I'm not giving it back. Come and get it yourself. Su Chan was flustered and exasperated. She pried Li Yundong's fingers open one by one. There was nothing there. She tried to pry open the fingers of his other hand, one by one, but there was still no sign of it. The little girl pouted, and tears immediately welled up in her eyes, as if they were about to drip down. Li Yundong saw that the girl was going to cry. He quickly took the key out and handed it to Su Chan. Su Chan immediately burst into laughter and took the key. Humph, she said, shaking her head. Now all your money is in my hands, she said. You have to listen to me. With that, Su Chan proudly stuffed the key into the piggy bank, then held the piggy bank tightly in her arms. Let's see how you're going to snatch it from me again, she said. Li Yundong laughed. You big idiot, he said. You put the key in too? How are you going to open it later? Huh, that's right. Su Chan suddenly came to her senses. She quickly took out the piggy bank and tried to pull the lock, but it didn't budge. She stared at Li Yundong. What? What should I do? Li Yundong tried hard not to laugh. He pinched Su Chan's cheek. Now you know how pigs die, don't you? Stupid pig. Stupid pig. You can smash it when you need money in the future. Now let's go home. Oh. She followed Li Yundong for a while, then suddenly thought of something. She looked up and asked, But I can't open the piggy bank. What if you secretly take money when I'm not around? But I can't open the piggy bank. What if you secretly take money when I'm not around? Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If you can't open it, do you think I can? What's your IQ? Su Chan blinked. What's IQ? Li Yundong slapped his forehead. Forget it. Let's go home. We've been wandering around for so long. I don't think that guy will come after us again. Then he suddenly thought of something. By the way, do you think they'll wait for us at our place? Su Chan's mind was on the piggy bank in her arms. I don't think so, she said casually. Li Yundong thought for a moment. Forget it. Let's go back to the hotel and get our things. If it doesn't work, we can return the house. We can get a refund for the deposit. The two of them took a taxi home. When they arrived at the door, Su Chong couldn't help but smile happily at the thought that Li Yundong would make hot food when they got home. Open the door. Open the door. I want to eat. Su Chong urged. Li Yundong opened the door and sighed. Hey, why do you only know how to eat? Didn't you eat a lot just now? Are you hungry again? Are you still growing? Su Chan's eyes turned into crescent moons. Yeah, how did you know? Li Yundong opened the door and changed his shoes at the door. Of course I know. I check your body often. Come, let me check your body. Su Chan entered the door and changed her shoes. She giggled and was about to say something when her expression suddenly changed. Yundong, watch out, she shouted. All of a sudden, a figure appeared behind Li Yundong. The figure was shaped like a monkey. Like a cannon, it punched at Li Yundong's waist. Almost at the same time, a figure appeared in the living room. Demon, he shouted. Die. Then, a green light went straight for Su Chan. C/OM/. Chapter 136. Go to watch net. Lin Yu's sneak attack was fast and fierce. If this punch hit Li Yundong's waist, Li Yundong's kidney would be crippled. Go to watch net. Go to watch net. The kidneys were the guards of the 5 internal organs. If a person was compared to a country, then the kidneys were the national defense forces of the country, specifically used to resolve all kinds of internal and external troubles of the country. If the kidneys were damaged, then the national defense forces of the country would collapse. Although it would not be immediately destroyed, it was inevitable that the country would be weak. A strong kidney would make a person energetic and powerful. A weak kidney would make a person listless and weak. In traditional Chinese medicine, it was believed that all diseases start from the kidneys. The root cause of all diseases could be found in the kidneys, which showed the importance of the kidneys among the 5 internal organs. If Li Yundong's kidneys were damaged, not only would he be unable to cultivate for the rest of his life, but he would also become a useless person who could not carry anything on his shoulders. When Su Chan saw this, she was shocked and anxious. She ignored herself and rushed toward Lin Yu, who was behind Li Yundong. Li Yundong, on the other hand, saw a green light rushing toward Su Chan. All he could think of was Su Chan. He also ignored Lin Yu behind him and went straight to Su Chan. The two of them only had each other in their hearts, but a strange combination of factors caused a mismatch. The duel that was supposed to be won by Ruan Hongling against Su Chan and Lin Yu against Li Yundong had become Su Chan against Lin Yu and Li Yundong against Ruan Hongling. Lin Youqing's divine power could be said to be amazing. His strength was a bit greater than Li Yundong's, but his speed had decreased because of this. What he was most afraid of was an opponent like Su Chan, who was extremely fast. Similarly, although Ruan Hongling's spiritual power was stronger than Li Yundong's and Su Chan's, she was born with extreme yin qi. She was most afraid of Li Yundong's pure yang qi, which did not have a trace of yin qi. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong and Su Chan had destroyed the sure-kill situation that Ruan Hongling and Lin Yu had created. If either Li Yundong or Su Chan had the slightest bit of selfishness, they would immediately be entangled by Ruan Hongling and Lin Yu, and the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Ruan Hongling had used 3 mysterious sky-bone-piercing nails to deliver the killing blow. Even though they missed Su Chan's vitals, one of them still nailed Su Chan's shoulder. Su Chan let out a muffled groan in pain. Su Chan pounced on Li Yundong, blocking his fist with one hand and striking at Lin Yu's chest with the other. The power of Lin Yu's punch was no small matter. Su Chan caught it with her palm. With a crack, the sound of bones breaking came from her forearm. She immediately groaned in pain. At this time, Li Yunyang pounced on Ruan Hongling like a cannonball. He punched at Ruan Hongling, and the majestic and vigorous Jindan's qi in his body was like a blazing flame, burning Ruan Hongling so much that she screamed and quickly retreated. As soon as Li Yundong's punch missed, he heard Su Chan moan in pain. He turned his head to look, and his eyes immediately widened. His hair stood on end. He was furious. "You're courting death." When a person was extremely angry, they would lose their rationality, but at the same time, their strength would multiply. The reason was that when a person was angry, their heart would beat faster, and their blood would flow faster. The liver would quickly release a large amount of blood and liver qi. This qi and blood would quickly circulate throughout the body, and then mobilize the yuanyang qi hidden deep in the body, allowing a person to exert strength that they normally couldn't. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Literature. Ordinary people usually had the strength of 50 kilograms, but when they were angry, they could have the strength of 150 kilograms, or even 200 kilograms. This was already the case for ordinary people, so Li Yundong's Jindan body was even more frightening. The functions of Li Yundong's 5 internal organs were more than 10 times that of ordinary people. Once he moved, his strength was unbelievably terrifying. Li Yundong's heart thumped wildly, as if a mighty general was beating a war drum with all his might. The sound of the war drum was passionate and indignant, and all the organs in Li Yundong's body entered a state of excitement and fanaticism. Then, Li Yundong's liver began to release visceral qi and blood, and his kidneys began to secrete adrenaline and kidney qi crazily. The liver was the general, and it was in charge of external attacks. The kidneys were the guards, and they were in charge of internal attacks. The qi and blood produced by these two organs, one inside and one outside, were like a mighty army, constantly sent to every part of Li Yundong's body, making him full of divine power. The qi and blood in Li Yundong's body surged wildly, and all the bones in his body crackled like beans being fried. His whole body seemed to have swelled up, his muscles bulged, and his blood vessels protruded like old vines. Li Yundong shouted and slapped Lin Yu with his palm. The air around him was squeezed by him to the point that it seemed to have been sucked dry, turning into a vacuum. Although Lin Yu had invited a god to possess him, he had done it twice in a day, which had consumed a lot of his qi and blood. Seeing that Li Yundong's palm was coming at him fiercely, he gritted his teeth, turned his wrist, and slapped Li Yundong's palm. "You're courting death." Li Yundong's face was full of blood vessels, and he looked extremely ferocious. As soon as his palm touched Lin Yu, the Jindan's primordial qi in his body roared like a flood opening a dam. Pa! A crisp sound rang out. As soon as their arms touched, the floor of the room shook violently. Su Chan saw that the two of them were suddenly in a stalemate. She endured the pain, stretched out her other hand, and pointed at the Huagai acupoint on Lin Yu's chest. If the Huagai acupoint was hit, then the qi flowing up and down in the human body would be blocked. It was like a midstream hitting the water. It was like a battle at the front, and the rear was intercepted by someone. It could cause chaos in the army without a fight. When Ruan Hongling saw Su Chan make a move, she shouted and swung her hand. Another mysterious sky bone-piercing nail went straight for Su Chan's chest. Su Chan only wanted to help Li Yundong out, and she put her own safety at the back of her mind. She didn't dodge. She just gritted her teeth and barely moved her body, not letting the bone-piercing nail hit her vitals. Her slender hand still kept moving towards Lin Yu. Lin Yu was hit in the chest by Su Chan. He suddenly felt his chest tighten and short of breath, and he was powerless. Li Yundong suddenly shouted and pressed down with his palm. With a crack, the bones of Lin Yu's forearm were instantly shattered, and his whole body knelt down with a bang. Almost at the same time, Su Chan's chest was hit by Ruan Hongling's mysterious sky bone-piercing nail, and blood splattered everywhere. Go to see the net. Watch. Lin Yu let out a wild roar, and quickly flashed out of the door. In a few flashes he disappeared into the building. He turned his head, and glared at Ruan Hongling like an angry King Kong. You hurt people again and again. Do you really think I can't kill you just because you're a woman? Ruan Hongling's face darkened. She looked at Ruan Hongling coldly. Li Yundong's words were murderous and creepy, but Ruan Hongling, as an inner disciple of the Supreme Taoist sect, was not someone who would be scared away by a few words. Ruan Hongling stood on the edge of the balcony and scolded angrily. You ignorant fool! Don't you know that the woman in your arms is a fox spirit? Aren't you afraid that she will suck up all your yang qi in the future and turn you into a human? Don't you know that humans and demons are different and can't coexist? Those who violate it will go against the law of heaven. At this time, Li Yundong was furious. How could he listen to her? He stood up, his eyes fierce and terrifying. He took a deep breath, and the qi in his body surged to his throat. Then he suddenly shouted, "Get out!" Boom! Like a spring thunder, all the glass in the room shattered with a crash. The thunder talisman in Li Yundong's pocket floated out automatically, as if it had a life of its own, shining with a burst of blue light in the air. Wan Hongling was hit by the sound wave of the rolling yang qi. Suddenly, her qi and blood became restless, and the soul in her body was almost shaken out of her body. Wan Hongling was shocked. She knew that if she let the boy in front of her roar again, the soul in her body would be shaken out of her body. In broad daylight, when the yang qi was at its strongest, the soul coming out of her body was really courting death. Moreover, the talisman floating in front of Li Yundong made Wan Hongling tremble with fear. This is the Five Thunders righteous talisman. Wan Hongling was so shocked that her face turned pale. Her heart was pounding. She looked at Li Yundong and Su Chan with hatred, not daring to stay any longer. Her body turned into a blue light and left like lightning. Seeing her leave, Li Yundong quickly put away the talisman, drew the curtains, and then carried Su Chan to the bedroom. He asked nervously, "Su Chan, how are you? Say something, don't scare me." Su Chan's face was as pale as paper, and her lips were pale. At this time, she was being tortured by the immortal qi of the mysterious sky bone-piercing nail. Her body kept rolling on the bed, her hands and feet curled into a ball, and her body kept trembling. Li Yundong was so scared that his face turned pale. He picked up Su Chan and said, "Hold on, I'll take you to the hospital." When Su Chan heard this, she immediately grabbed Li Yundong's collar and struggled to say in a trembling voice, "Don't go, I'm fine. Take me back to the hotel. It's not safe here." Without saying anything, Li Yundong rushed out with Su Chan in his arms. When Su Chan reached the door, she suddenly remembered something. She pointed into the room and said reluctantly, There's something else." Li Yundong turned his head and saw Su Chan pointing at the Pinky 11 Kitty piggy bank lying on the carpet in the living room. Li Yundong didn't know whether he should be angry or laugh. "Are you still thinking about that thing at a time like this?" The little girl's body shrank into a ball in Li Yundong's arms, as if she was very cold. She couldn't help trembling and struggling to say, "Money? You'll have no money to spend." Li Yundong's heart shook, and he almost burst into tears. He picked up the piggy bank, then rushed downstairs with Su Chan in his arms. He stopped a taxi on the side of the road and shouted the address to the taxi driver. As the taxi driver drove, he kept looking at Su Chan and Li Yundong through the rearview mirror, feeling surprised and doubtful. Li Yundong gripped the piggy bank tightly. He was about to smash it open and take out the money to pay the taxi fare when Su Chan grabbed him and whispered, Don't smash it. I still have money in my pocket." Li Yundong was stunned. He reached into Su Chan's pocket and found a 50 yuan note. "Didn't you put all of it in there?" he asked. Su Chan forced a smile. "I was afraid that one day you'd take the piggy bank away and abandon me." "I can still use this money to find you." Li Yundong laughed, but his tears kept falling. He wiped away the tears on his face and stroked the messy hair on the little girl's cheeks lovingly. "Don't be silly. How could I not want you?" Su Chan gripped the hem of Li Yundong's shirt tightly. You won't abandon me just because I'm a witch, will you?" Li Yundong nodded. His voice was choked with sobs. "Yes, little girl will always be my little girl. This uncle will never abandon you." Su Chan felt a little relieved. Although the two of them spoke in a low voice in the back seat, the driver in the front seat could hear them clearly. Although he didn't know what happened between the young man and woman in the back seat, The two of them spoke with deep attachment and lingering affection for each other. Their tone was lingering and sad. Even an iron man would be moved, and a stone man would cry if he heard it. The driver was touched by their love. He stepped on the accelerator and arrived at the destination in 10 minutes. Li Yundong didn't have time to thank the driver. He dropped the 50 yuan note and rushed back to the hotel with Su Chan in his arms. As soon as they entered the hotel, Li Yundong closed the door and put Su Chan on the bed. Su Chan, are you okay? He asked anxiously. Su Chan's teeth were chattering. I'm fine, she said. Turn around. Don't look at me. I'll be fine by myself for a while. Li Yundong looked at the large patch of blood on her chest in confusion. He pointed at it and asked anxiously, Are you okay here? Su Chan said in a trembling voice, No, I'm fine. It's just a minor injury. The real injury is the Xiantian bone-piercing nail, made of the immortal qi of the Jingyi school. As soon as it enters my body, it turns into a bone-eating qi, which is extremely painful. I have to force this qi out. You turn around. Don't look at me, okay? Please. Li Yundong didn't know why Su Chan wanted him to turn around, but he still nodded, turned around and shouted at the wall. Is this okay? Do you really not want my help? Su Chan sat cross-legged on the bed and begged. No, I can do it myself, but you must not turn around. Li Yundong was more and more confused, but he suppressed his curiosity and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. His mind was in a mess. When Su Chan saw Li Yundong turn around, she took a deep breath. Her lower abdomen bulged slightly, and then quickly contracted. Slowly, her chest rose and fell, and her throat moved up and down, like a wave pushing something in her body to her throat. After a while, Su Chan suddenly spat out a 5-colored bead. It was her nidin. As soon as this nidin was spat out, the whole room suddenly shone brightly. Li Yundong was surprised and suspicious. Just as he was about to look back, he heard Su Chan say sadly, Don't look back, please, Yundong. Only then did Li Yundong resist the urge and sit up straight. After the nidin was spat out by Su Chan, it kept spinning in front of her, emitting cyan gossamer. These gossamer went into Su Chan's body one by one, and drew out the white gossamer inside her. As the nidin left Su Chan's body for a long time, Su Chan's body became more and more itchy. She knew that it was because she had lost the protection of the nidin, and was about to reveal her true form. Su Chan was shocked and scared. She was afraid that her true form would be discovered by Li Yundong. But if she didn't pull out the bone-eating qi in her body as soon as possible, her life would be in danger. Su Chan was on tenterhooks as she pulled the bone-devouring qi out of her body. She kept praying in her heart that he wouldn't turn around. Bit by bit, the bone-devouring qi was extracted from her body, and she slowly turned into her fox form. This long and painful process of pulling out the qi was like the worst torture in the world. Su Chan felt that this time was as long as centuries. Li Yundong also felt that such a wait was a kind of deep torture. He really wanted to look back and see what was going on behind him, but he was also very worried that something would happen to Su Chan. However, he didn't want to disobey Su Chan's plea, so he could only grit his teeth and bear it. After an unknown amount of time, Su Chan finished pulling out all the bone-eating qi in her body and swallowed the nidin back into her body. Suddenly, the colorful light in the room dimmed. Li Yundong saw that the light had disappeared and was immediately overjoyed. He thought that Su Chan had finished pulling out the qi, so he turned around and asked anxiously, What happened to you? Before he could finish his words, he saw Su Chan looking at him in shock and fear. Her mouth opened and closed as if she wanted to say something. Li Yundong touched Su Chan's forehead with his hand in confusion. What's wrong with you? What's the problem? Su Chan looked frightened and subconsciously moved her body. Li Yundong followed her movements and suddenly froze on the spot. He saw a fluffy red fox tail pressing down on Su Chan's body, and he couldn't hide it no matter how hard he tried. Li Yundong stared at the fox tail in a daze, and there was a buzzing sound in his head. C/OM/. Chapter 137. Go to the internet. Why didn't she let me turn around? Why was her identity so strange? Why was she always afraid that I would dislike her? Why did Wan Hongling say that she was a witch? Li Yundong's mind rumbled. Countless thoughts surged through his mind at this moment, and finally turned into one thought. So Su Chan is really a vixen? Why didn't I think of it? Li Yundong stared straight at the fluffy fox's tail. He opened his mouth, and there were countless words in his mind that he wanted to say, but the words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say a word. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Su Chan also stared blankly at Li Yundong. Her expression was one of horror and fear. What she had been hiding had finally been discovered. He had finally discovered that she was a wild fox. He had finally discovered that she had been hiding from him and deceiving him. Yundong. Why won't you listen to me and not look back? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong blankly, feeling as if her heart had been pricked by a needle. She summoned up her courage and said in a trembling voice, Yundong. Li Yundong seemed to wake up from a dream and suddenly raised his head. For a moment he couldn't turn around and looked at Su Chan with a blank expression. For a moment, he didn't know how to face this vixen who had been with him day and night. After all, human beings and demons were different. Li Yundong subconsciously took a step back and stammered. Aye. Li Yundong's bewildered expression and subconscious actions were like a cruel and sharp knife, tearing Su Chan's soft and sensitive heart into pieces. He dislikes me. Su Chan's head buzzed and went blank. Her heart seemed to be grabbed by someone and squeezed so hard that she couldn't breathe. Li Yundong's mind was in a mess. He stared at Su Chan in a daze, and Su Chan stared at him in a daze. The two of them looked at each other, and this familiar gaze suddenly seemed so strange. He glanced at the bloodstains on her chest, and hurriedly found an excuse to hide in the bathroom. I'll get you a towel, he said. I'll go get you a towel, he said. I'll get you a towel. Li Yundong rushed into the bathroom and put his hands in front of the sink. It seemed that if he didn't use his strength to support himself, his body would softly sit down. This boy, who had been amazing when he was fighting with Lin Youfa before, now felt as if all his strength had been sucked away by someone. He was flustered, he was terrified, he was at a loss. He turned on the tap and let the water flow. Then, he washed his face again and again with the cold water, as if he could face this familiar stranger. What should I do? Wan Hongling's fierce words kept echoing in his mind. Don't you know that the woman in your arms is a vixen? Aren't you afraid that she'll suck your young energy dry in the future and squeeze you dry? Don't you know that humans and demons are different? They can't coexist. Violators are against the laws of heaven. In the past, Li Yundong would have regarded such words as nonsense and scoffed at them. But when he saw Su Chan's fox tail with his own eyes, how could he not believe these things? Li Yundong pulled at his hair with all his might and kept circling in the bathroom like a sleepy beast. He kept muttering to himself, why didn't she tell me earlier? Why did she hide it from me? Is she really like what Wan Hongling said? Does she want to suck my yang energy dry? Calm down. Li Yundong kept saying to himself in his mind. He patted his cheek hard, raised his head, looked at himself in the mirror on the sink, and whispered to himself, Li Yundong, don't think too much. Su Chan didn't tell you, because she was worried that you would dislike her. She was afraid that you wouldn't want her anymore. Look at the internet. 7K. OM. Think about it, has she ever hurt you? Has she ever despised you, a useless piece of trash? By the way, you can ask her. Su Chan will tell you. Li Yundong made up his mind. His eyes gradually became firm, and his expression became much more natural. When he walked out of the door, he took a deep breath and showed a gentle smile on his face. Su Chan, you. But before Li Yundong could finish his words, he saw that the hotel was empty. The bed was empty, and the room was empty. At this moment, Li Yundong's heart was also empty, as if he had lost his soul. She's gone? Li Yundong's eyes widened. His body stood there as if he had been immobilized. The smile on his face froze in an instant, and his heart fell to the bottom of a cold valley. Only when a person loses something would they know how precious it is. Suchan. Li Yundong's whole body was cold, and he suddenly realized that he had made an unforgivable mistake. She was so sensitive, so afraid that I would dislike her. Even when she was seriously injured, she didn't forget to repeat this to me. But why couldn't I think of this? Where would she go? Where could she go? The more Li Yundong thought about it, the more scared he became. He was so anxious that he didn't know what to say or do. It was as if the sky was dark at this moment. Li Yundong walked around the room in a panic and found that Suchan hadn't taken anything with her when she left. The pink piggy bank was lying obediently in the corner of the bed, motionless. Humph, now all your money is in my hands. Uncle, you have to be obedient and listen to this little girl. The little girl seemed to be smiling sweetly in front of him, and then stupidly stuffed the key into the piggy bank. Li Yundong raised his head and tried hard not to let his tears fall. But in the haze of tears, he clearly saw the little girl holding the corner of his clothes tightly. Although she was seriously injured, she still forced a smile at him. I'm afraid that one day you will take away the piggy bank and don't want me anymore. I can still use this money to find you. Li Yundong's lips trembled, and his tears quickly gushed out. He murmured, the little girl won't leave me, she won't leave me. By the way, she must have gone home. Thinking of this, Li Yundong immediately rushed out of the door, out of the hotel, stopped a taxi, and went straight to his and the little girl's home. She must be here. She must be here. She has nowhere to go. Li Yundong kept comforting himself, his eyes red and his heart burning with anxiety. After finally arriving at Hongsheng New District, Li Yundong rushed out of the car without even paying the fare. The driver stuck his head out of the car and scolded him, but Li Yundong acted as if he didn't hear him. Li Yundong rushed into his home, opened the door and shouted, Suchan. His voice spread out in the room, but there was no echo, only a floor full of broken glass and withered eyes. Li Yundong's heart was cold, and his hands and feet couldn't help but tremble. He looked for Suchan room by room, shouting her name loudly in every room, as if in the next second, she would suddenly appear behind him like last time. Go to the internet. Then why did you talk again? Weren't you afraid of being discovered at that time? Li Yundong couldn't help but think of the little girl's voice and smile again. Because I was afraid that you would be worried about me. I saw that you couldn't find me, and I was very sad, so I couldn't help but. At that time, the little girl's eyes were full of tenderness and deep worry. She was afraid that he would leave her behind, so she would rather expose herself than let Li Yundong worry and be afraid. Fool, where are you? Li Yundong's eyes were full of tears. He raised his head and sighed, muttering to himself. Li Yundong stood in the spacious living room in a daze, like a frozen stone statue. He clearly remembered a stubborn girl shouting at a group of indifferent people, and a Philistine landlady. Li Yundong is the best person in the world to me, and he will definitely become a great hero in the future. I won't leave him. He could still clearly remember the little girl throwing herself into his arms. She cried and swore. I believe that sooner or later, you will become a great hero. I just believe it. What Li Yundong couldn't forget was a beautiful girl pointing at him and saying confidently to a rich man, you must remember his name. His name is Li Yundong, and he is my partner. Although he is a nobody now, I promise you that in less than 2 years, his name will be famous all over the world. At that time, what you can do, he can do without any effort. But what he can do, you will never be able to do. Thinking about it, Li Yundong couldn't help but burst into tears. Li Yundong, you are the most ungrateful person in the world. You even suspected that Suchan would hurt you. She treated you like this, but you treat her like this? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Regret, pain, memories, and longing rushed over like a surging tide, drowning Li Yundong in an instant, making his heart ache so much that he couldn't breathe and his whole body trembled. Standing in this spacious and empty living room, the warm and bright home in the past was now cold and dim. Li Yundong kept replaying the scenes in his mind one after another. The bits and pieces of his life were like thousands of thin threads that tightly tied him together, making him finally understand one thing. Even if she was a vixen, so what? Could it be that the usual laughter, love, and sweetness were all fake? Could it be that her sincerity towards him was also fake? Suchan, where are you? I don't care who you are. I only know that you are my girl, the girl that will never change. Come back quickly. Li Yundong suddenly shouted. His voice was emotional and sorrowful, and it spread far and wide. However, Suchan's voice never sounded here. Li Yundong was almost desperate. He rushed out of the door crazily and ran on the street like a headless fly, shouting Suchan's name everywhere, like a trapped beast, like a madman, and all the passers-by looked sideways. After searching for a long time, Li Yundong suddenly thought of something. He suddenly stood on the street in a daze, and his eyes suddenly became brighter and brighter. Then he suddenly broke into a run and rushed toward a place. Yes, she must be there, she must be there. Li Yundong shouted like a hysterical madman. Suchan turned into a blue light and left the hotel. When she appeared, she found herself standing on a strange street, surrounded by surging crowds and noisy traffic. The towering buildings looked so strict and indifferent. Just now, Suchan just wanted to escape from that place and avoid Li Yundong's eyes, but she didn't know where she was going or where she could go. Suchan stood on the street in a daze and suddenly found that she had no one to rely on. She was alone, and the world was so big, but there was nowhere to go. Suchan regretted it. She wanted to go back, but she thought of what Li Yundong had said to her before. Don't hide anything from me in the future, or I will dislike you. Suchan couldn't help but cry. He found out that I've been lying to him. He dislikes me. He doesn't want me anymore. No one will love me in the future. Thinking of this, Suchan couldn't help but burst into tears. She walked alone, wiping the tears that kept falling. She didn't know where she was going, so she just walked aimlessly on the street. Unconsciously, Suchan found herself in the amusement park that she had been to with Li Yundong before. She didn't even know how the guard at the gate let her in. Seeing this familiar scene, Suchan's tears fell harder and harder, attracting the attention of the people around her. Suchan didn't want these people to see her cry, so she hid in the grass alone. When the crowd slowly left and there was no one around, she came out, walked alone to the huge landing gear of the space shuttle, and sat down. It was late at night, and the moon was bright and the stars were few. The surroundings were quiet and dark. Suchan's petite figure sat in the seat, looking particularly lonely. Suchan hugged the hard and cold armrest, as if she was hugging Li Yundong's arm. She raised her head and stared blankly at the starry sky. The stars in the sky seemed to have turned into pictures, all of which were the details of her and Li Yundong's daily life. No one will be so good to me in the future. Suchan's face was covered in tears. She sobbed, and a heart-wrenching pain made her feel as if the world had collapsed. Li Yundong rushed into the amusement park and headed straight for the space shuttle. His eyes were fixed on the space shuttle. The closer he got to it, the more nervous he became. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen to him if he didn't find the little girl here. What would happen to him? But when he got closer, he suddenly found a familiar figure sitting on the landing gear of the space shuttle. She was so lonely and pitiful, so lovable. It's her. It's my girl. Li Yundong felt a kind of extreme joy that almost exploded from his chest. He couldn't help but walk forward quickly, but after a few steps, Li Yundong couldn't help but stop. He walked forward slowly, as if he was afraid of scaring away this sensitive and fragile girl, afraid of scaring away his beloved girl. Li Yundong quietly walked behind Suchan and heard her murmur as she wiped her tears. Master, I miss you. I didn't mean to lie to you. Before she could finish, Li Yundong couldn't help but say, I know. I'm here. I miss you too. Suchan's body trembled violently. She subconsciously wanted to turn her head to look at Li Yundong behind her, but she forced herself to hold back. She didn't dare. She was afraid that if she looked back, she would see the fear and disgust in his eyes again. Suchan leaned forward slightly. She wanted to escape quickly, but her attachment and love for Li Yundong wrapped around her tightly like a vine, making her dare not run away. The little girl was both surprised and happy. Her whole body trembled like a frightened little sheep. Li Yundong stood behind Su Chan. He didn't dare to reach out and hug her for fear of scaring away the panicked girl. He said in a slightly trembling voice, "Don't run, girl. Listen to me. I don't dislike you really. Do you still remember what I told you? No matter what, you are my girl. Have you forgotten?" Su Chan trembled and turned her face to him. Her delicate face was full of sparkling tears. She said in a trembling voice, "You really don't dislike me? I can only cause trouble for you. I can't help you with anything. I'm also a vixen hated by everyone in the cultivation world." "You don't dislike me?" Li Yundong nodded vigorously. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he said with a smile, "Am I not also a good-for-nothing college student with no money and no car? You see, I can't give you anything. I can't buy you clothes even if you want to. But you don't dislike me, do you?" Su Chan stared at Li Yundong with tears in her eyes, and her lips trembled slightly. Li Yundong wiped his tears and continued to say with a smile, "Didn't you say that you would accompany me and watch me become a great person? How could you forget? It doesn't matter whether you are a vixen or not. What matters is that I like you. Do you like me?" Su Chan couldn't hold it in anymore. She threw herself into Li Yundong's arms and hugged his waist tightly with both hands. With a loud cry, she cried so hard that it was as if her heart and lungs were being torn apart. "Master, please don't despise me. I'll be a good girl," she cried. Li Yundong's heart was full of bitterness and sweetness. He held back his tears and stroked the little girl's hair as he said, "No, I won't despise you." After that, he hugged Su Chan tightly, as if he was afraid that she would disappear in the next second. The most painful thing in the world was that you didn't know how to cherish some precious things until you lost them. And the most wonderful thing in the world was that when you lost such a precious thing, when you were in pain and despair, it came back to you, and you got it back. Li Yundong held Su Chan in his arms, and felt that the world had suddenly become so wide again, and the starry sky had become so clear again. It seemed that with her, he had everything, the whole world. The next second, the end of the world would come, and there was nothing to be afraid of. When I went home tonight, I found that I couldn't get on the internet, and there was no sound at all from the phone at home. I called 10000 and said that someone would be sent to repair it. I waited until 10:30, but no one came. I had to take the USB flash drive to the internet cafe to update it. It was a little late. Sorry everyone. Although it was the second watch today, it was really a long chapter with more than 9,000 words, the same amount as the usual third watch. Tomorrow is Saturday, and it's still the third watch. /om/. Chapter 138. Go to watch net. Li Yundong and Su Chan had no idea how long they cuddled and hugged each other, until the moon was covered by the clouds, as if they were too embarrassed to look at the lovey-dovey couple any longer. Watch net. 7K. Oh, Hong. The little girl gradually got tired of crying. She sobbed from time to time. She wiped her tears and hummed, "Why did you think of looking for me here?" Li Yundong wiped the girl's tears with a smile and said, "Haven't you heard of this saying?" The little girl cried so hard that her nose was stuffy. She said in a nasal voice, "What are you talking about?" Li Yundong said with a smile, "I don't have the flying wings of the colorful phoenix, but my heart is connected." The little girl burst out laughing. "Who has a telepathic connection with you? You're so annoying." Li Yundong chuckled. He stretched out his sleeve and handed it to the little girl. "Hurry up and wipe your nose. You've got snot bubbles coming out." Su Chan said angrily, "You're the one who has snot bubbles coming out of your nose. You're so annoying." "I'm not." But as she said this, she grabbed Li Yundong's sleeve and wiped her face like a cat washing its face. Su Chan let go of Li Yundong's arm in satisfaction. She looked up and saw Li Yundong smiling at her. She couldn't help but blush. What are you looking at? Don't laugh at me. Li Yundong smiled and said, Okay, I won't laugh at you. But come closer, and I'll tell you a secret in a low voice. Su Chan leaned over curiously and whispered, What secret? Li Yundong said in a low voice. Actually, you wiped your snot all over your face just now. Su Chan turned pale with fright and shouted, Ah, it can't be right. What are you going to do about it? With that, she buried her face in her hands and buried her head in Li Yundong's arms. Li Yundong burst out laughing. I was just kidding. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to pull the little lass up, but the little lass covered her face and refused to lift her head. After Li Yundong tried to persuade her, the little girl wiped it repeatedly with her hand. Then, she raised her head with a flushed face and asked nervously, Is there anything else? Will it become ugly? Li Yundong smiled and pinched the girl's cheek. Silly, I told you I was lying to you. Watch net. 7K. OM. Net. Super_speed. More. New. Su Chan couldn't help but say angrily, You're so annoying. You're so naughty. I don't want to talk to you anymore. How could Li Yundong allow the little girl to escape from his grasp? He quickly hugged the little girl and pulled her into his arms. He held her tightly with both hands and said, Where are you going? Su Chan giggled and held Li Yundong's arm tightly with both hands. Her heart was warm, full. She felt very warm and safe. Under the moonlight, Li Yundong saw that the girl had bright eyes and white teeth. Her eyes were like water, and she was indescribably bright and lovely. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her gently on her rosy lips. Su Chan's body trembled, and she unconsciously softened. She raised her head and stared at Li Yundong, murmuring, Yundong, aren't you afraid that I'm a vixen? Li Yundong laughed. Don't you know that I like little vixens like you? As he said this, he reached out to touch the little girl's breasts. Where are you hiding your tail? Let me see. The most sensitive part of Su Chan's body was at the pubic bone. When Li Yundong's fingers touched her, her whole body suddenly trembled, as if she had been electrocuted. She said in a trembling voice, Don't touch there. Li Yundong stopped and said with a smile, I won't touch it if you tell me where you're hiding your tail. Su Chan moaned and hid her head in Li Yundong's arms. She said in a low, muffled voice, I won't tell you. Li Yundong smiled and reached out to touch the little girl's pubic bone. The little girl was so scared that she hurriedly begged for mercy. I'll tell you. Su Chan blushed and said, Only after I spit out the nidin and my spiritual energy is greatly reduced will I show my true form. Now I can't see it, let alone touch it. Li Yundong was a little disappointed. He held the little girl in his arms and sat on the lift platform of the space shuttle, saying, I was wondering why you didn't let me turn my head at that time. Su Chan couldn't help but say angrily, I told you not to look back, but you did. Li Yundong smiled embarrassedly and said, I thought you were done. However, you shouldn't have hidden this from me. Su Chan pouted and said, I was afraid that you would dislike me. As she spoke, she suddenly thought of something, and her expression became timid. She pulled at Li Yundong's clothes with her fingers and said weakly, Yundong, there's one more thing I haven't told you. Li Yundong's face darkened, and he pretended to be angry. Good girl, you're still hiding something from me. Tell me, confess, and I'll be lenient. Resist and you'll be severely punished. Su Chan said timidly, When you swallowed my Rinyuan Jindan, I did want to squeeze you dry. Li Yundong was stunned and stared at Su Chan with his eyes wide open. Are you serious? Su Chan shrunk her head and nodded, as if she knew that she had done something wrong. Go to see net. Achanjoam Li Yundong couldn't help but ask. So you don't want to do it now? Su Chan nodded quickly. Yes. Why? Li Yundong said with a smile. Su Chan held Li Yundong's arm and counted the good things that Li Yundong had done for her in the past. She said, You treated me so well later, so of course I couldn't bear to do it. Humph, you're so lucky. My Rinyuan Jindan was given to you for free. Do you know how many people want this Rinyuan Jindan? Li Yundong couldn't help but chuckle. He pressed his forehead against the girl's. You idiot, he said. I'm really lucky because I have you. Su-chan was happy and touched to hear that. She couldn't help but look at Li Yundong with more and more infatuated eyes. Su-chan's cheeks were flushed, and her nostrils flared. Yundong, kiss me, she said passionately. Li Yundong cupped the girl's cheeks with both hands and kissed her deeply. The kiss was like a bolt of lightning that ignited the fire of the earth. The two of them immediately tangled their tongues. The two of them kissed for a long time until they were both out of breath. Only then did they separate, panting. My mouth is numb, Su-chan said with a giggle. Li Yundong also laughed. My tongue is numb from your sucking. Su-chan's cheeks turned crimson. She rushed over and covered Li Yundong's mouth. You're not allowed to say it. Li Yundong laughed and dodged. There's no one here. What are you afraid of? Su-chan giggled and said, no means no. Li Yundong was aroused by the girl's natural charm. He couldn't help but reach out to take her hand, and then touch it under his lower abdomen. He said in a low voice, Girl, you've aroused the fire of your master. What do you think I should do? When Su-chan's hand touched the hot and hard thing, she was so scared that she suddenly retracted her hand. Her whole body melted into Li Yundong's arms like a pool of spring water. She whimpered, Yundong, I can't do it now. Li Yundong smiled bitterly. When can I do it? Su-chan's cheeks were so red that they seemed to be dripping blood. She said in a low voice, You have to wait until you reach the Juji phase. Li Yundong let out a long sigh and said painfully, Why do I have to wait until I reach the Juji phase? Su-chan gently stroked Li Yundong's chest with her hand, helping him smooth out the qi in his chest and slowly calming down the rising desire in his body. Because only after you reach the Juji phase will the essence qi in your body be stable. Only then will the yuanyang qi in your body not be seduced by my yin qi when we have sex. And then it will flow out of control. Li Yundong was stunned. No way. Then how can I reach the Juji phase? What about the Juji phase? Su-chan explained. The Yellow Emperor's canon of internal medicine divides human cultivation into several stages, namely the child body, the leakage body, the broken body, the weak body, and the weak body. Although Li Yundong was only one threshold away from the Juji phase, he was completely clueless when it came to the cultivation theory. He said with a blank face, What do you mean? Explain? Su-chan explained with a smile. The Yellow Emperor's canon of internal medicine states that before the age of 16 for men, and before the age of 14 for women, both men and women have not reached the Tiangui phase. Therefore people have a child body. At this time, they don't need to reach the Juji phase to directly practice magic and magic. Li Yundong couldn't help but interrupt. You don't mean the Tiangui phase of men and the menstruation phase of women, do you? The little girl nodded, blushing. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. No way. Nowadays, how can people reach the Tiangui phase at the age of 16 or 14? Nowadays, children are becoming more and more precocious. Su-chan sighed and said, That's why there are fewer and fewer cultivators nowadays. Once the inner disciples of orthodox cultivation sects are born, they must be taken away and specially raised. They must not let the food of the secular world make them mature prematurely, thus destroying their child body. Li Yundong nodded in understanding. So that's how it is. I understand. Go on. Su-chan said. Like you, who have reached the Tiangui phase after the age of 16, but still have a child body, is called a missing body. At this time, you must first restore the missing body, and then you can reach the Juji phase. If you have sex with me now, it will be a missing body, also known as a broken body. At this time, it will take twice the effort for half the result to cultivate. You must first consolidate the blood essence and make up the missing body, and then you can reach the Juji phase. Li Yundong said, I see. What about the weak body and the weak body? Su-chan said, When a man is 56 years old and a woman is 42 years old, a man is 64 years old, and a woman is 49 years old. If you want to cultivate at this time, you have to spend 12 times the effort. First, you have to steal the essence of heaven and earth to make up for the already weak body. Then you have to accumulate energy and enhance your vitality. Then, you have to consolidate the blood essence and make up the missing body. Then you have to build the foundation and restore your child body. Finally, you can cultivate. Li Yundong suddenly understood. I was wondering why those who achieved the Tao in ancient times all had white hair and a youthful face. It turns out that they have all been restored to a child's body? Su Chan nodded and said, once you succeed in the Zhuji phase, the essence qi in your body will be as stable as Mount Tai. From then on, you will not be disturbed by the outside world, and there will be no loss of semen or menstruation. From then on, the human body will be a complete small universe. There will no longer be any loopholes, and no essence qi will leak out. Li Yundong said impatiently. Then what are you waiting for? I'll go to the Zhuji phase now. Su Chan laughed and scolded. You pervert. Not now. The Zhuji phase is the most important thing for cultivators. There are only 2 opportunities in life. Once you miss them, there will be no hope for you to cultivate for the rest of your life. Li Yundong stared blankly and said, What do you mean by that? If I fail in the Zhuji phase twice, I won't be able to do it with you for the rest of my life, right? Su Chan covered her mouth and giggled. Yes, otherwise you will die from excessive semen. Li Yundong's face was full of heroic spirit, and he said righteously, I'm willing to die for you. Su Chan stamped her feet and said angrily, Bah, don't talk nonsense. We both have to be good. In the future, we will travel all over the world together. Li Yundong laughed and said, Okay, after saying so much, I can only say one thing. As long as we reach the Zhuji phase, we can do it, right? Su Chan's face had not been red for a long time, but at this time, it suddenly turned red again. She giggled and said coquettishly, You hooligan, you only know how to do bad things. Li Yundong laughed evilly. He held Su Chan in his arms and waved his hand heroically. Well, for the happiness of my girl, I want it. Zhuji. /om/. Chapter 139. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong shouted, and his voice spread in all directions. Su Chan was so scared that she looked around and said angrily, How can you shout this kind of thing everywhere? Li Yundong said with a smirk, Do you mean the first half or the second half? Su Chan's cheeks turned red. She giggled and said, Bad guy, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I want to go back. Li Yundong pulled Su Chan and refused to go. Don't be in such a hurry. Tell me how to build the Zhuji phase first. Su Chan looked back and smiled. She bit her lip and looked charming. She smiled shyly and teasingly. How can I teach you to build the Zhuji phase if I don't go back? Li Yundong was greatly tempted by the little girl's seduction. He laughed and couldn't wait to take the little girl's hand, saying, Well, there's no time to lose. Let's go back now. But Li Yundong suddenly remembered something. He smiled bitterly and said, Oh no. Su Chan looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Li Yundong rummaged through his trouser pocket and said with a wry smile, I don't have a penny on me. How can I go back? Do I have to walk back? Su Chan giggled. You're so stupid, she said, shaking like a flower. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, How dare you laugh at me? I think your butt is itchy. Su Chan smiled and said, I can fly you back. Li Yundong was surprised and delighted. You can fly? By the way, you must be able to fly. Otherwise, how could you disappear from the room out of thin air? Can you take me with you? Su Chan said proudly, Of course. After that, she raised her head and raised her nose to the sky, looking insufferably arrogant. However, she kept secretly watching Li Yundong from the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were rolling, and her expression seemed to be saying, Come and praise me, come and praise me. Li Yundong was very sensible, and made a gesture of worship. Great immortal Su, quickly show your magic power, and take us ignorant people to broaden our horizons. Su Chan was amused by Li Yundong's exaggerated movements and expression. You're so annoying. How can I call you great immortal? Li Yundong saw that his flattery had failed, so he quickly said with a flattering smile, What about Xiaoxian? Su Chan smiled and said, Neither is Xiaoxian. Li Yundong smiled again and said, Then Fox Fairy? She could finally talk about her identity and sect with him openly and honestly. She was in a good mood, and her whole body felt comfortable, as if she had just drunk a fine wine. She felt completely at ease, as if she had just drunk a fine wine. Watch net. 7K. OM. Watch net. 7K. Oh. Hong. Oh. MSO. It turns out that talking to the person you like without reservation is such a pleasant thing? Su Chan's heart was filled with sweetness, and her smile was also sweet. Her eyes seemed to contain honey. Since the establishment of our Fox Zen school in the period of Emperor Xianzong of the Tang dynasty, there have only been two people who can be called immortals. One is the founder, Ancestor Rock, and the other is the fourth-generation leader, Mystical Silver Fox. Both of them have cultivated to the highest realm of the Fox Zen school and become real fox immortals. The others are all fox demons. Su Chan played with her braids, her eyes rolling in her sockets. She tilted her head and pursed her lips. As she thought, she said, My master said that if I didn't have a chance, it would be difficult for me to cultivate to the realm of the six-tailed spiritual fox, let alone the highest realm of the seven-tailed divine fox, the eight-tailed earth fox, and the nine-tailed celestial fox. Li Yundong asked curiously, The more tails you have, the more powerful you are? Su Chan nodded and said, 9 is the largest number in the world, and it also represents the highest realm, such as Jiutian, 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 and so on. There are also 9 levels of heaven in cultivation. It's the same for us. When we cultivate to the nine-tailed celestial fox, we will reach the peak. From then on, we can be ranked among the immortals and look down on the world. At this point, Su Chan suddenly pouted and said, If you hadn't stolen my Rinyuan Jindan, maybe I would have been a six-tailed spiritual fox by now. I'm so stupid, so I definitely won't be able to cultivate to the six-tailed spiritual fox in the future. Li Yundong took Su Chan's hand and asked tentatively, Didn't you say that collecting yang to nourish yin can also improve your cultivation? As he said this, Li Yundong patted his chest with a calm and righteous expression on his face. I will risk my life to accompany lady. Girl, come and pick me. If I frown, you are not a man. Su Chan laughed so hard that she was rocking back and forth. I'm not a real man. Li Yundong laughed and said, Yes, yes. You are a free little itinerant immortal in the world. Su Chan giggled and looked at Li Yundong with a softer and more infatuated gaze. She clasped Li Yundong's fingers tightly and smiled sweetly. Yundong, I am so happy. Go to the internet. Li Yundong laughed and said, What are you so happy about? You are happy that I stole your Rinyuan Jindan, or that you can collect yang to nourish yin later. She smiled and fell into his arms. She pressed her face against his warm and broad chest, listening to his strong heartbeat. Yundong, although I don't have the Rinyuan Jindan, I have you by my side, she said in a sweet voice. Yundong, although I don't have the Rinyuan Jindan anymore, I have you by my side. Although the Rinyuan Jindan can make me a six-tailed fox spirit, with you by my side, I feel that even if I become a three-tailed fox spirit with little demon power in the future, I will still be very happy. These infatuated words made Li Yundong's heart ripple. He hugged the little girl tightly and said with a smile, Let's cultivate together in the future. I will help you become a nine-tailed celestial fox, and you will help me become the #1 master in the world. The two of us will be partners in Jianghu, laugh at the world, and be a pair of immortal lovers. It is only we who bully others, and no one else who bullies us. Su Chan listened and was fascinated. I really look forward to that day. However, I am too stupid. I will definitely not be able to become a nine-tailed celestial fox. But Yundong, you have the best temperament, the best talent, and the best opportunity. I think you will definitely be a famous cultivator in the cultivation world in the future. As Su-chan spoke, her little nose wrinkled cutely, and she giggled proudly. When the time comes, others will know that my Taoist companion is the famous Li Yundong when they see me. Hee hee, let's see who dares to bully me then. Li Yundong raised his head and laughed. The famous Li Yundong doesn't even know how to fly now. I say, after talking so much here, it's time to go back to the Zhuji phase, right? Great Immortal Su, please hurry up and use your magical powers. Su-chan straightened up, covered Li Yundong's eyes with her hands and said, then close your eyes. Li Yundong asked curiously, why do I close my eyes? Su-chan said, when people close their eyes, the liver will slow down the process of filtering and storing blood. The metabolism of the human body will slow down, and the blood qi will also run slower, so the qi in the body will rise. In this case, it will be much easier for me to fly with you. If you open your eyes and see something high in the sky, I'm afraid that your heart and meridians will immediately be in disorder, causing the turbid qi in your body to sink, increasing the burden of my flight, and even causing both of us to fall from the sky. Li Yundong said in surprise, I don't have acrophobia. What's there to be afraid of? Su-chan said with a serious expression, there are 3 kinds of great horror in cultivation, which are the common demons of cultivators. The first is the great horror between life and death. The second is the great horror between heaven and earth. And the third is the great horror between reality and illusion. In the future, when your spiritual power is enough, you can learn to fly on magic tools, and then you will know what the great horror between heaven and earth is. Seeing that Su-chan was serious, Li Yundong couldn't help but look solemn. He closed his eyes honestly and said, don't worry, I definitely won't open my eyes this time. Su-chan was a little worried and said, you must not open your eyes. Otherwise, you will fall to your death. Li Yundong nodded hard and closed his eyes even more tightly. I won't open them. After saying that, he suddenly felt his body become light, and his body floated up as light as a feather. Then, the wind whistled past his ears, and he felt as if he was sitting in a 200 km/h convertible sports car. Even the skin on his face was aching from the strong wind. Li Yundong opened his mouth to speak, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he felt a strong wind rushing in and forcibly swallowing his words. Li Yundong was shocked, and suddenly his heart began to beat wildly. This didn't matter, but the qi in his body suddenly sank, making his body become heavy. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong felt his body fall violently. This violent sense of weightlessness made him feel as if he had stepped into the gate of hell, and his heart seemed to jump into his throat in an instant. Su-chan shouted in shock and fear. Yundong, take a deep breath and put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Don't let your imagination run wild. We will fall to our death like this. Li Yundong immediately took a deep breath, put his tongue on the roof of his mouth, and tried to empty his mind, not thinking about the surrounding environment and the terrible feeling of falling. Soon, he felt his body shake and stopped falling in an instant. After a while, his feet suddenly sank, as if he had stepped on something solid. He heard Su-chan's frightened voice. Okay, you can open your eyes now. Li Yundong opened his eyes and found himself in an inconspicuous street corner, not far from the hotel. Beside him, Su-chan's face was ashen, and she kept patting her chest. What happened just now? Li Yundong took a deep breath, and his heart slowly fell back into his chest. Su-chan said angrily, why did you have to speak? Li Yundong looked at Li Yundong helplessly and said, you didn't say that I couldn't speak. Su-chan looked at Li Yundong helplessly and said, so you're blaming me? Li Yundong smiled and said, forget it. First time, second time. I'll know in the future. Besides, you should hurry up and teach me the Zhuji phase. When I succeed in the Zhuji phase and learn to fly, I won't have to be so scared anymore, right? Su-chan thought for a moment, then smiled and said, that's true. Well, let's go back quickly. Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, didn't you say that you want to fly? What kind of magic item do you use to fly?" Su Chan's cheeks suddenly turned red. She was too embarrassed to answer Li Yundong's question, so she just took his arm with both hands and urged him, "Hurry up and go back to the Zhuji phase." Li Yundong laughed and pinched the girl's cheek with his hand. "You're even more anxious than I am. TSK little pervert." Su Chan smiled and said angrily, "Bah, you're the pervert. You only know how to do bad things after you finish the Zhuji phase." Although her words were accusatory, the corners of her eyes were full of the natural seductiveness of a little girl. She was secretly sending him glances, which made his heart beat faster. Li Yundong was tempted. He couldn't wait to succeed in the Zhuji phase immediately, and then have a good relationship with this little girl. There were as many cultivators in the world as there were carps in the river. But Li Yundong was probably the only one in the world who had reached the Zhuji phase in the name of pushing down. /om/. Chapter 141. Go to watch net. After finishing the preparation work before the Zhuji phase, Li Yundong took a deep breath, closed his eyes slightly, put his tongue on the upper jaw, and gradually emptied his mind. Gradually, he felt a wave of heat rolling up from his waist, then to his dantian, then to his perineum, across the Magpie Bridge, to his Niwen, and finally along the 8 extra meridians to the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. Go to watch net. 7K. OM. Literature. At this time, Li Yundong only felt warm all over, and the thoughts in his mind gradually disappeared. Beside his ear, Su Chan softly recited Lu Dongbin's poem. Concentrate and adjust your breath. Listen to the true breath through your 5 senses and 7 apertures. Listening to the breath is the most important. The human heart and Taoist heart are interdependent. When the mortal breath stops, the true breath rises unconsciously. When the true breath stops, the mortal breath rises, and the breath returns to the root and enters the lower field. The universe of oneself has heaven and earth, and the heart is higher than the sky and the kidney is higher than the earth. Exhale into the Tianyuan root, and inhale into the Tianyuan root. It is the truth of breath regulation that the true heart and true breath are always interdependent, and the spirit and qi are interdependent. Li Yundong heard it clearly, although he didn't understand what this cultivation poem meant for a while. When his mind gradually emptied, his qi unconsciously ran according to the principles of this poem. Su Chan carefully looked at Li Yundong's eyelids. When people closed their eyes, apart from sleeping, as long as they were thinking, their eyeballs would always roll by themselves unconsciously. When Su Chan found that the eyeballs under Li Yundong's eyelids were no longer rolling, she knew that Li Yundong had entered a meditative state of silence. In this state, as soon as a person's thoughts were interrupted, the true God in his body would immediately appear automatically. This was what the cultivation poem said. When the divine sense is broken, the true God is born, and the true God is born to refine the primordial spirit. After Li Yundong entered a deep state of meditation, he found that he was once again in the spirit space he had created. He had transformed into an immovable wisdom king with 3 heads and 6 arms, who could hold up the sky and earth. The last time Li Yundong controlled this true God with boundless divine power, he almost entered the realm of Mahasvara, and was unable to extricate himself. This time, he was prepared in his heart, and it was difficult for his mind to be shocked by the boundless divine power in his body. Go to watch net. Li Yunyang tried to raise his hand. With a bang, countless dark clouds quickly rolled in the distant sky, and thunder rumbled. He waved his hand again, and with a crack countless bolts of heavenly thunder fell from the sky. The earth seemed to be facing a lightning catastrophe, and every inch of land was being violently bombarded. As for Li Yundong, he stood between heaven and earth motionless. Even though there were thousands of thunderbolts around him, none of them struck him. He was like a majestic king standing on the battlefield, surrounded by soldiers who were rushing forward like a tide. But none of them dared to collide with him. Looking at the destructive scene around him, Li Yunyang couldn't help but sigh in his heart. I wonder when I can cultivate such a magical power in the real world. But as soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he suddenly found that the whole spirit space had suddenly changed. He was no longer standing between heaven and earth, but in an ordinary world. Li Yundong saw He Xiao standing there, pointing at his nose and cursing. His voice was extremely unpleasant. Who do you think you are? An uncultured little bastard wants to steal my woman? Little bastard, let me tell you, Zhou Qin is my woman. If you dare to touch a hair on her, I will kill you immediately. Kill me? I'd like to see who will kill who. Li Yundong suddenly flew into a rage. He raised his hand, and countless heavenly thunder fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, He Xiao's body and soul were destroyed. But then Lu Chuan, Wu Hui, and the others who had once had a grudge with him jumped out one after another and cursed. You can kill him, but can you kill everyone in the world? Could it be that he was wrong? You are just a good-for-nothing. How can you be worthy of the woman beside you? Li Yundong was furious. His anger was so great that heaven and earth were trembling. His whole body was surrounded by terrible blue light and thunder chi, like an angry god. Do you all want to die? Just as Li Yundong was about to lose his temper, he saw Zhou Qin appear beside him and persuade him bitterly. Li Yundong, stop. Killing is against the law. At this time, Li Yundong only felt that the world was under his control. There was no one in the world who could defeat him, and there was nothing that could threaten him. He laughed and said, against the law? As he said this, Li Yundong pointed to the top of his head and then to the bottom of his feet, shouting, the sky was born because of me, and the earth rose because of me. I want all living things to prosper and grow, so that they can have life. If I want the world to perish and disappear, they will be destroyed and die in an instant. Tell me, what is the use of this method? After that, Li Yundong was about to use the method to kill Lu Chuan, Wu Hui, and the others, but at this time Feng Na, Cheng Cheng, Chao Kefi, and the others all appeared. They begged bitterly. Even if He Xiao deserves to die, these people don't. Please let them go. But at this time, Lu Chuan, Wu Hui, and the others were still unrepentant, cursing loudly. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Li Yundong laughed angrily. You people are all good people in vain. Look at them. Have they ever repented at all? People like them are better off dead. After that, Li Yundong was about to use the method to kill Lu Chuan, Wu Hui, and the others, but at this time Su Chan appeared. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with a sad look on her face. Yundong, don't, she begged softly. This is the devil of slaughter in your body. Don't let it control you. You'll go crazy if you do. As soon as Li Yundong saw Su Chan, his anger immediately dissipated. The flashing lightning around his body also gradually disappeared. He stared at Su Chan in a daze and said with a hint of anger, You're also trying to persuade me? Su Chan slowly walked up to Li Yundong and fixed her eyes on him. I'm not trying to persuade you, she said softly. Have you forgotten our agreement? If you go crazy, then you won't be able to build the foundation. If you can't build the foundation, then how can we fly together? Su Chan couldn't help but blush as she said this. Her expression was one of bashfulness and anticipation. Li Yundong's anger vanished in an instant. As soon as the anger in his heart dissipated, he found himself waking up from his meditation. He was still in the small hotel, and Su Chan was staring at him in surprise. You succeeded in building the foundation, sir, she shouted. I succeeded? Li Yundong exclaimed. No way. So easy. So fast. Su Chan nodded vigorously, a smile blossoming on her face. She wrapped her arms around Li Yundong's neck and said, Of course. My sir is a genius that only appears once every 500 years. Li Yundong laughed heartily. The beauty in front of him smelled like orchids, and the smile on her jade-like face was full of admiration. How could he not be proud of himself? Li Yundong also wrapped his arms around Su Chan's waist. "Then can we do that now?" he asked with a sly smile. Su Chan's cheeks were red, and she giggled. "Naughty boy. You just succeeded in building the foundation. And you want to play tricks on me? No." Then she tried to run away. How could Li Yundong allow her to escape? He quickly held her with both hands, lowered his head, and kissed the little girl's lips. As soon as the little girl was kissed, her body softly fell down, and she collapsed into his arms, as if she had no bones. Her nose let out a moan that was as sweet as honey. Li Yundong had been looking forward to this day for a long time. As soon as he heard the voice, he felt his whole body heat up. He reached out his hand to the girl's chest, and slowly pressed her soft body down on the bed. For a moment, the two of them were entangled and turned red. Li Yundong was sprinting in this kind of erotic gentleness. The beauty under him was panting. He was intoxicated and didn't know that he had already gone crazy. What was the horror between reality and illusion? The horror was that when you thought you were in an illusion, in fact, you were in the real world. But when you thought you had returned to the real world, in fact, you were still in your own illusion. After Li Yundong entered the Zhuji phase, 2 days had passed in the outside world, while he had been in the spirit space. Relying on Su Chan's influence on him, Li Yundong had defeated his Zai Tianma. But at the same time, he had fallen into his love for Su Chan and his yearning for sex. A person's desires were like a net, layer after layer, interlocking with each other. When one desire was extinguished, another would rise up and attack stealthily, causing one to be unable to guard against it. Li Yundong was in the Zhuji phase for the first time, so he didn't know the great horror between reality and illusion. Moreover, before he had entered meditation, he had been seduced by Su Chan and let his imagination run wild, leaving behind the root of inner demons. At this time, he thought that he had succeeded in the Zhuji phase and was making love with Su Chan. But in fact, in the real world, Su Chan was so scared by Li Yundong that she was sweating. At this time, Li Yundong's human nature rose uncontrollably in his divine sense, and even the blood in his body flowed faster. The most terrible thing was that the thing on Li Yundong's waist was stimulated by the desire. It rose high, and the blood in his body was rushing there crazily. Su Chan knew that Li Yundong must have been controlled by the inner demons at this time, and the qi in his body was not flowing normally. Moreover, she saw the thing below Li Yundong jumping with the surging blood. She was even more frightened and her face was pale, for fear that Li Yundong would erupt in the next second. When a person was in the Zhuji phase, it was the process of mobilizing all the qi in the body to compress and refine it into the Niden. At this time, the human body was like a pressure cooker, when the qi was boiling and had nowhere to vent. If Li Yundong opened his qi at this time, then his leakless body would immediately be broken. This was equivalent to a flood that had found a vent in an instant, and it would surge out in an instant. Even the precious Jindan's qi in Li Yundong's body would be lost along with the essence qi in his body. Su Chan was burning with anxiety. She knew that outsiders could not disturb the Zhuji phase, let alone help them. Otherwise, even the person who helped them might fall into the inner demons and be unable to extricate themselves. But now that Li Yundong was about to fall, Su Chan couldn't care so much. She fiercely clenched her teeth, pressed one hand on the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head, and poked his Lingtai acupoint with her index finger with the other hand. In traditional Chinese medicine, there was a method called bloodletting. When the qi in a person's body was too strong and inflated, they would use a needle to prick the person's finger and release the qi in the body through this method. Su Chan poked the Lingtai acupoint with her finger, and it was as if she was poking a finger to let out blood. As she poked the Lingtai acupoint with her finger, the surging qi in Li Yundong's body immediately found an opening. Su Chan poked the Lingtai acupoint to release the qi, and at the same time, She poured her own yin qi into Li Yundong's body through the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head, using this to calm the crazily flowing yuanyang qi in his body. But she hadn't expected that the yuanyang qi in Li Yundong's body would be far stronger than she had expected. As soon as she poured her yin qi into Li Yundong's body, a powerful yuanyang qi immediately counterattacked. This counterattack was so fierce that it invaded Su Chan's body in the blink of an eye, making her feel the bone-deep desire that Li Yundong had sunk into the sea of desire. Su Chan was unable to move under the impact of the powerful qi in Li Yundong's body. Her expression was one of pain and fear, and a trace of despair flashed through her mind. It's over, we're both finished. How could this be? /om/. Chapter 142. Go to the net. Early in the morning, Shen Hui, who was on summer vacation, was bored, so she went to the Dongxing building to play with her cousin. However, as soon as she entered Yin Mengfan's office, she found that Yin Mengfan was on the phone. After hanging up the phone, she picked up the car key and was about to go out. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Literature, Shen Hui said with a smile. Cousin, where are you going? Yin Mengfan smiled and said, I'm going out to find someone. Are you so free during the summer vacation? Doesn't uncle care about you? Shen Hui curled her lips and snorted. He can't even deal with his concubines. How can he have time to care about me? Yin Mengfan raised her hand and made a gesture of wanting to hit her. She pretended to be angry and said, a son doesn't talk about his father's fault. How can you talk about your father like that? Shen Hui was frightened by her gesture and jumped back. She made a face and said angrily, that's right. Isn't the old master just a rich man? He brought so many women home and made himself look like a feudal landlord. Bah, it's disgusting. That's why I don't like him. Seeing that she couldn't control Shen Hui, Yin Mengfan shook her head helplessly and sighed. Alas, Uncle Shen is good at everything, but he's too romantic. I really don't know what his family will produce in 100 years. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of the descendants of the Shen family, who were eyeing her uncle's property covetously. She sighed in her heart. Yin Mengfan was silent for a while. She suddenly thought of something and raised her head. By the way, I'm going out now. You play here first. I'll be back later. Seeing that she was going out, Shen Hui rolled her eyes and hugged her arm in a flattering manner. Don't be like that, cousin. Take me with you. I'm bored. Yin Mengfan knew that Shen Hui was the daughter of the Shen family and the apple of her uncle's eye. He loved her like a treasure, and no one could do anything to her. That was why she had developed a devil's character. If she didn't follow her temper, she was afraid that she would cause a ruckus here. Moreover, with her status, who could control her? Who would dare to? Yin Mengfan smiled helplessly and said, I heard that your stepmother signed you up for piano, calligraphy, painting and dance classes. There are so many classes, but you don't need to go to any of them. Why do you have to come here and behave so atrociously? A look of contempt and disdain appeared on Shen Hui's face. She sneered and said, Her? She just wanted to gild her precious son's reputation and conveniently bring me along to curry favor with the old man in the family. This woman had given birth to a beautiful son, and now her ass was so high up in the sky, she walked like a crab, as if she wanted to occupy the entire road by herself. Fortunately, the old master is still alive. Otherwise, humph, why would she bother with me? Don't joke around. At this point, Shen Hui scolded with indignation and disgust. Also, this woman has a hypocritical character, and her son is just like her. He looks well dressed in front of us, but who knows how many good women he has ruined behind our backs. The most hateful thing is that he actually set his sights on me. If this isn't a beast, then what is? As she spoke, Shen Hui's expression suddenly changed again. She looked at Yin Mengfan pitifully and said, Cousin, you are the best to me in the family. You are really good to me. If you don't take me to play, then I really won't have anyone to play with me. Yin Mengfan pressed her forehead and was speechless. Forget it, I'm really afraid of you. How could you say that about your stepmother and brother? I'm convinced. Yin Mengfan looked at Shen Hui seriously and said, then no matter what you do, you have to listen to me. Don't talk nonsense and don't act recklessly. Do you understand? Shen Hui cheered and nodded vigorously. She hugged Yin Mengfan and said with a smile, Cousin, you're the best. By the way, what are you going to do? Why don't you reveal a little? Maybe I can help. Yin Mengfan smiled helplessly and said, as long as you don't help. I'm going to find Li Yundong. I'm going to watch the net. 7K. OM. When Shen Hui heard this, she immediately jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, Why are you looking for this pervert? I know. You must be very moved by his kung fu that day, when he made Chao Kefi lose her virginity. Right? I didn't expect that, Yin Mengfan. You're pretending to be pure and innocent. You're actually the same as other people behind our backs. Don't tell me that our Shen family only produces thieves and prostitutes. Yin Mengfan was so angry that her face turned red. She raised her hand and slapped Shen Hui, leaving 5 finger marks on her face. What nonsense are you talking about? I saw that he cured Chao Kefi's illness, and felt that he was like a kung fu master. I wanted to invite him to treat my uncle. In 2 months, it will be my uncle's birthday. I want to find a master who can cure his chronic illness as a birthday present. How can you slander me like this? As she spoke, Yin Mengfan sat down and tears streamed down her face. Shen Hui covered her cheek and moved to Yin Mengfan's side in embarrassment. She squatted down and pushed her leg timidly. Cousin, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. You know that I'm a person with a quick mouth. I can't control it. You're a big person. Don't argue with a villain like me. As she said this, Shen Hui slapped herself a few times with an apologetic smile. Look, I'll slap this stinky mouth to vent your anger for you. Yin Mengfan also knew Shen Hui's temper. She wiped her tears, took out a wet tissue from the table, and handed it to Shen Hui. Wipe your face and apply it. Does it hurt? Shen Hui giggled and said, I'm thick-skinned. Cousin, you're not angry anymore. Yin Mengfan shook her head helplessly. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with the tissue and said angrily, You're so annoying. You made me angry as soon as you came here. My makeup is all ruined. Shen Hui shook Yin Mengfan's arm and said coquettishly, Cousin, you're a natural beauty. Don't be afraid. Yin Mengfan stood up and said with a wry smile, Forget it, I'm afraid of you. Let's go. It wasn't easy for me to find out Li Yundong's whereabouts from Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin is waiting for me at school. Don't let her wait too long. Go watch the net. Shen Hui pouted and said, There are so many capable people in the world. Why do you have to look for him? I don't believe that he has any real talent. Yin Mengfan quickly touched up her makeup and said, Didn't you see it with your own eyes that day? Isn't it true? Shen Hui tilted her head and snorted coldly. He must be a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Or he colluded with that B***tch Chao Kefi. Yin Mengfan was furious. How can you talk about people like that? Then you don't have to go. Stay here, or go wherever you want. Shen Hui was shocked, and quickly put on a pitiful look. I know. I'll be good later, okay? However, her eyes were rolling in her eyes, and she was secretly thinking about how to embarrass Li Yundong later. Yin Mengfan had no time to guess what she was thinking. She took the car key and rushed to the underground parking lot with Shen Hui, then drove to Tiannan University. 20 minutes later, Yin Mengfan parked an Audi A6 at the school gate. She lowered the window and saw that Zhou Qin was standing at the school gate with a book in her arms, talking to 2 girls. Zhou Qin! Yin Mengfan stuck her head out of the window and waved her hand. Zhou Qin followed the voice and looked over, then nodded at her. She turned her head and said something to the 2 girls beside her. Then the 3 girls walked over together. President Yin. Zhou Qin approached and greeted her with a smile. Yin Mengfan also got out of the car and looked at the 2 girls beside Zhou Qin curiously. Zhou Qin smiled faintly and said, I went to Li Yundong's residence this morning, but he wasn't there. Later, I met these two senior sisters of mine. After chatting for a while, I found out that Li Yundong had moved out again. Well, let me introduce them. These two senior sisters are Feng Na and Cheng Cheng. They know where Li Yundong lives now, and they happen to be looking for Li Yundong, so I think we might as well go together. Yin Mengfan smiled and extended her hand to the two of them. She said in a reserved and polite manner, "Hello, I'm Yin Mengfan from Dongxing Real Estate. Nice to meet you." Feng Na and Cheng Cheng shook hands with Yin Mengfan and complimented each other politely. Zhou Qin said, "Then I'll go get my car." Feng Na, Cheng Cheng, will you take my car? Feng Na was about to speak when suddenly, the roar of a motor came from afar. The women looked over at the same time and saw a very flashy Lamborghini convertible sports car drive over and stop beside them. A beautiful woman wearing sunglasses looked at Yin Mengfan and Zhou Qin in surprise. "President Yin? Zhou Qin? Why are you two here?" Yin Mengfan laughed. "President Chao, I should be the one asking you that, right? Why are you here?" Chao Kefi smiled bitterly and said, "Don't mention it. A few days ago, this old man suddenly disappeared from my sight. I have been looking for him for 2 days. When I tried to call him, his phone was turned off. He is really mysterious. I came to school today to see if I can find him." Yin Mengfan smiled and said, "President Chao, it's not easy to trouble you. What's so important?" Chao Kefi smiled and smoothly changed the topic. "If it wasn't important, would I be in such a hurry to find him? By the way, you're not looking for him, are you?" Yin Mengfan didn't continue to ask. After all, people in this circle knew that the way to get to the bottom of things was the most annoying way to talk. She smiled and said, "President Chao is really smart. We're going to find Li Yundong. Let's go together." Chao Kefi was overjoyed. "That's really good timing. Great, let's go together." Then she smiled at Zhou Qin and said, "Zhou Qin, I've never given you a ride before. Will you do me the honor today?" Zhou Qin smiled and said, "Then I'll accept your invitation." Then she turned to Cheng Cheng and Feng Na and said, "Then you two will take President Yin's car?" Feng Na pursed her lips and smiled. "No, I want to take the convertible. I've never sat in such a good car in my life." As she said that, she and Cheng Cheng, who was beside her, giggled shamelessly. Although the words of the two people were snobbish, Chao Kefi and Yin Mengfan both felt that the two girls were simple-minded. They were much better than those hypocrites in society, who didn't say anything, but wanted to die in their hearts. Yin Mengfan smiled and shook her head. "It seems that President Chao is smart. She would rather be under pressure to buy a good car. Now you're proud." Chao Kefi smiled and said, "President Yin, you're rich. Don't tease a little girl like me. Let me go." Zhou Qin got into the front seat and fastened her seat belt. She smiled and said, "You two don't have to flatter each other. Let's go first." While speaking, Chao Kefi had already started the car. The power of the small sports car's motor was indeed different. As soon as they started, they left the Audi A6 several spaces behind them. After Feng Na told Chao Kefi the address, Chao Kefi said in disbelief, "Why is he staying in a hotel again? What's wrong with his family? Did he quarrel with Su Chan? No way, I think they're very loving." Zhou Qin supported her head with one hand and leaned her elbow against the car door, allowing the wind to mess up her hair. She sighed faintly and said, "He is too mysterious. I can never see through him. But the more I can't see through him, the more I want to get closer to him to take a look." Hearing Zhou Qin's words, Chao Kefi, Feng Na, and Cheng Cheng all fell silent. They all sighed in their hearts. Yes, Zhou Qin is right. This boy seems to have a magical power, attracting them unconsciously to get close to him, understand him, and own him. Li Yundong, who are you? Why are you so mysterious? /om/ You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.